All right. Welcome to Kadosh LIfe. It's Sharissa here, and I am today interviewing David James Norman,
Norman.
and so AKA DJ, AKA Ishmael. Um, and David has an interesting story that can tend to get incredibly complicated and go over the average human's head. So we're going to try to streamline it today to get some background and baseline understanding for who he is. I watched his interview with Eric Smith that they didn't end up posting, but you can find it on his Facebook page, which I will link so you can go and check out what he's doing. But he was a PTSD test case for the military. And he's basically like a computer program of knowledge that they intended him to expose over time. And so we're going to just kind of go back and start at the early basic surrounding story around all of the complicated information that he's exposing. Our common interest is exposing the truth of who the Mormon Church truly is, and their connection with the military and government. And so that will obviously come out throughout as we talk about who David is. And do you consider yourself, David, like controlled disclosure, like programmed controlled disclosure?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
And I've been given great leeway because I haven't had any contact with any of my real, I guess the word they would use would be handlers or authority, the people that make the decisions. I haven't had any contact with them in almost 10 years now. So I must be doing, they did a lot of hard work on me. And I took a lot of mental hits for this and a lot of drugs that they were administered without fighting and without leaving bruises. And that was the key to all this. And so, yeah.
And so they want you to be exposing what you're exposing. That's their intent for you. You're their creation baby of controlled disclosure, essentially.
And I left the military in 1985 knowing that and being told that. Yes, ma'am.
So why do you believe that they want these secrets put out there in a controlled way? What do you feel like their intention is? The church, the military, whoever it is that's programmed you?
They got to remember, I have bias. Okay, so I mean, the Mormons have really messed my world up and messed a lot of other people's worlds up, and they won't own it. They won't own a tiny bit of it, and that's a big issue. But there was a Mormon psychologist by the name of Jessen, and he became a bishop after he did his whole thing, but then they got rid of him really quickly because of the publicity around it. But this Mormon psychologist named Jessen was associated with a non-religious person named Mitchell. They wrote the enhanced interrogation profile that ended up being used in Gitmo, Cuba. And there's stuff that just hasn't been talked about. Even when they had the release of all the waterboarding, they didn't talk about all the different kinds of waterboarding and waterboarding with drugs and waterboarding of different kinds of drugs and the process with the MK Ultra. That's what we did. And so anyways.
Okay, so before we go too far into that, I want to come back to that. Well, Jessen and Mitchell, before I move on to where I really want to start, where are they? Where was that at? Can you say where they were?
1985 in Coronado, California. It was talking about, and I don't think they were at the 1987 event. We'll come to the date later on that. But in 1985, last time I did see Mitchell and Jessen in the 2000s, late in Eugene, Oregon, at a safe house somewhere along the way. But that was basically it. Okay. And they had been working on me as a kid in the 70s, and the Mormons had been doing trauma, and they call it lots and lots of trauma over and over and over again with different drugs to make me forget what I had just seen and then observe me later after the fact and see if those memories popped up again or if they caused major problems for me. And that was part of it. And it was very useful because when you get into a terror situation or an interrogation situation and the law allows it, if you can interview somebody that knows knowledge of an event that's coming up and you can stop it, that's really good news from a law enforcement standpoint. And so they got creative with that, and they're like, well, what happens if we interview this guy, because they understood neurolinguistic programming and how when you ask a person a question in a rapid fire like this, and they're just talking and not thinking about it or reading a script, they have to use their eyes reveal the brain and how they're thinking before they come up with a thought or a words or typing. And so if you go into an interview with a cop and they ask you a bunch of questions and it's video recorded, and then you leave the room and you don't even know what they asked or how you answered, so you can't answer it again, which just changes the way your eyes are when you go over the same thing over and over again. And then you can catch them. You can catch them in
Oh,
a you can catch them in a lie much easier. And then when you catch them in a lie and you convince them that you do know that they're lying, you pop open the mind a little bit more and you're likely to crack them easier. Does that make sense?
yeah. So how old were you when they started watching you? Like was this from birth, and how did they get access to you from your childhood? Did your parents sell you into a program? How did that all begin? Let's go back to the beginning from like your birth. How did this develop?
I also have to, so this is where I'm going to talk about memories. At the age of 17, I was in a 3-day event in the military where part of it was where the truth was being evaluated. I was being questioned hardcore about my life on video. And they were asking me all kinds of questions. And I didn't know the answer to some of those questions. And when I gave truthful responses, they later came back with video and showed me my past. And as I've recovered all this, I'm not recovering memories from being a baby that weren't prompted, from being young, weren't prompted by seeing that videos of what happened at the age of 17, of when I was 5, 7, 9, and then go, oh my God, and pulling that part of my memory up, and it's a part of that memory now, and then being drugged again, and then recovering all that within the last 5, 7 years.
So
So
your childhood memories that you do have, you're telling me like basically your whole childhood was videoed?
a lot of it, the trauma, and the trauma is what I pulled up. Of course, there's good stuff too, but the trauma is always big. There's screaming red alert, and it's the one in the memory that wants to play over and over again. And it's easy to get to that point in my head, and then I can go
Okay.
backwards. Oh yeah, we were at a lake having fun.
So the 17-year-old 3-day event, let's go way back before that. But that was what you were
But I- but I-
mainly prepared
but I,
for. The main.
but I just want. But I just wanted to put the caveat in there that the 17-year-old, at 17 years old, I was shown the major points of what happened before I was 17. And that allowed me to remember the stuff that had been chemically taken away. Does that make sense?
Yes. So do you have a relationship with your parents?
My dad died on a weird date, same day Anton LaVey died in Otero Code in 1982, January 29th, 129. And then my mother is still alive. She's a cancer survivor, stage 4. She lives down in LA.
And so did they know that you were in this program? Were they a part of, did they give permission for you to be watched as a child? Were they involved?
Oh, no, there was no legal permission that was given like that. It was a forceful thing. And then at the age of 17, I was legally certified as an adult to be in the military. And I had conversations with high-ranking, highly intelligent people that explained to me that I was an adult, that I could sign a contract. There was some question about whether it was truly informed consent. But as I got to be the adult that I am now, talking like I am now, I'll backdate contracts for the United States government. I got no problem with any of that. The way that I was, the words that I was taught to use and the way I agree 100% with, it took a little bit of evil to get rid of a much greater evil called Mormonism. And so there you go. And that's my CIA skill set as a DIA kind of guy. What do
So
you want?
what age did the military start traumatizing you and accessing you? How early?
I had access to Red Cell, Marcinko, Richard Marcinko, and we were about 13 years old, 14 years old, 1983, 82, and right in there. That's where Richard Marcinko, and we have so many videos. Last contact with Richard Marcinko was at a safe house in Deadwood, Oregon on July 6, 2012. And he did a lot of good for me. I really appreciate it. He pulled up a chemical repressed memory that was hardcore done at the Veterans Administration for suicidal and homicidal ideation And I was drugged to forget it as I walked out, partial drugging. So you remember first part first, first part second, makes you really pissed off when you kill a bunch of people. Yeah. And so that was chemically repressed like 3 months before that. And I was at this safe house and he showed me video clips of me in a clinical setting at the VA and what they were doing, sparking that memory like they did when I was 17 years old, showing me the kid stuff, and then chemically repressed it again for it to come out in a certain way. And now, oh, it's beautiful, beautiful. We got really good at this programming.
So how young was the youngest that you know that they were traumatizing you or showing you videos that they were videoing you? Did you say like 3 and 5 years old?
Well, I can go back to my first murder, and that's going to be about age 2 years old. I was in the first house that I was born, the first house I came back from a hospital, and they had a twister board, and it was a Mormon missionary got his head sliced, and he got hog-tied and carried outside the house. And remember, this is memory in my head, I'm talking to you, and carried outside, and his neck sliced, and the blood went on the ground, and they planted a flower where the blood was, and we were all chemically repressed. I don't remember anything after that for that day.
This was at your house? Where did that happen at?
That was at our house. Yeah, they let the Mormon missionaries in the door, and then 4 or 5 people came in, and they were giving us a lesson, and we were Catholics. My mom's more Jewish, and she is Jew now. She wanted nothing to do with anything other than conservative Judaism. But at that time, we were practicing Catholics, and so
Does your mom know that there was this murder that took place at your house? Was she present for that, and did she witness it as well? I mean, you were only 2 years old.
my mom is a messed woman, psychologically, and she's barely surviving now, and she can't handle any of this. She shuts down completely, and no one talk about it completely. And so I've tried to spare her some of this stuff. I did get to show her Eric Smith's interview with me. She's still alive. And she was like, you know what her response to that was? I can't believe I signed you to go into the military at the age of 17 to become an adult for this. She was like,
Well,
I did.
so then do you think that your mom was a part of this program too? Maybe just she wasn't allowed to access memories? Because if they were coming in your house when you were 2 years old and doing murders in front of you with your mom there, then what was, her own, DID or trauma, that she repressed that and doesn't have memories of that as
My
well
mom's
when
a
she
victim.
that.
My mom's a victim. She's a victim and uncompensated. At least I'm compensated because the military owned it. They took control of it, and it's my challenge is to get stuff like I'm talking to you with done in the right way and in the right fashion so that it can be public.
Who would have gathered that video? Who would have been videoing, and how would you not have known that they videoed this murder and you, when you were 2 years old, that they could show to you later?
It was the Mormons. The Mormons were running this program, and then Nelson somehow became head of a Sunday school or whatever in the 70s. And that gave him a lot of authority over kids and data to access. You don't want to go do this to thousands of kids. You're going to leave a paper trail and a bunch of bruises. You want to be able to go through a list of people and, oh, I want that one, and that one. And one of those three is going to be your prime kid. And the other ones might just die. That you need to base it off of. There's going to be intelligence. There's got to be a certain numbers because they really like the numbers. And so, like one of the first numbers as a kid is your birthday, 121. And so, as you're being drugged as a little kid, you're being told that you're special, and this is why you're being special because you were born 1 minute into the Aquarius cycle, so you're on the cusp. And this is supposed to be the age of Aquarius. And being born 1 minute after midnight on 1201 gives you a Julian birthday of January 8th, and that's Elvis, and he's a star. And then you're drugged, and you're like, what the hell was that all
So
about?
this was all you?
Yeah,
This is your birthday and all that? So how do they control the minute, hour, all of that you were born? Because I mean, with all of that you're exposing, it seems that that's all being controlled, the birth times and the dates. So how do they control that? Do you know?
Well, I don't know that the 1201 birth, the 1 minute birth on 121, January 21st, I don't know that that was even on my birth certificate until the 1985 event. The Mormons may have forged that to give a semblance that I was so super special because I was a 1201 born on 1201 or 0121. So they might have forged that, or it could just be that the doctor was going, yeah, he was born closer to January 21st than January 20th. We'll make it look cute and special. I don't know. None of that. I don't think any of that really matters. I don't think that based on what day you were born determines the date of your death, because that's the date of my death too. I'm projected to die February 3rd, 23, 2 divided by 3, the movie 23, all that was pre-scripted in 1985 and shown that it was going to be trickle released. And we were presented ourselves as we've already watched it, we've already seen it, we've been to the future, including my death on 2/3/46, February 3rd on the Gregorian calendar is January 21st on the Julian calendar, and that's the Russian or the Soviet calendar. And there was a meeting of the Soviet paranormal in this 3-day meeting. And
So how do they? Okay, so I know you say you don't think it's important, but for somebody like me, to especially with as often as you post that these patterns are playing out, that somebody's being born on the day that they die on, or a reversal of it on all these different calendars, it has to be being manipulated, right? Because that doesn't just happen naturally.
the ending,
So
murder is murder. That
so do you think that they are they're just manipulating the birth certificates and the death certificates, or are they actually manipulating and watching times in order to kill people certain days? I mean, it's much easier to control a day you want to kill somebody than to control a day that somebody's born. But
no. It's so here's the big one. I was conceived on Hitler's death day and born Mormon Hebrew Hitler's birthday. So when you know these numbers and you got the calendar and you got planning and you got power, they can get a couple to make a baby on a certain day with a projected birth, and they can administer oxytocin or whatever it is to get that birth, or do a C-section. A C-section, that baby will be born exactly when you want it, whether you have a fake birth certificate or not. Now you get that one. You understand? Now you get it.
yeah,
Yeah, C-section, baby.
yeah, absolutely. That makes sense. But usually those conceptions that I know of are being done in satanic rituals.
And they rank them. So they're going to be ranked. A natural birth at 1201 on 121 will have higher conformational bias in that bone relic, a higher value in being a spiritual connection than one that's harvested by C-section and made to be born, or harvested by fake certificate. The certificate's what counts. What's on the record counts, unless you have video confirmation proving otherwise. And then how do you prove that that video was taken at that actual time? You can't do that.
So then do you think your mom was possibly part of a Catholic like bloodline ritual family that was drug into that, and that you were selected from that? Because why did they start targeting you at such a young age, and your mother, the Mormons?
No, I don't think the Catholics had anything to do with any of this kind of stuff, other than they saw what had happened to me as a kid, and they had to walk out of there being drugged themselves in that 3-day event, and they wished me great luck.
The Catholics?
Yeah, some high-ranking Catholics in 1985. And I don't even like using the names. I don't really know the names, but we're talking cardinal and bishop and stuff like that stuff. And we were in Los Angeles. Well, I was in San Diego actually, and they were present in their uniforms and stuff. And then Oaks likes to Dylan Oaks, the Mormon. He likes to dress as a Catholic and as Elvis, and he's so special because his whole family's got Elvis's death dates all over it and stuff. But Oaks, they dress in costume. I've seen lots of costumes all my life. Okay, stop.
Yeah. Well, let's see, I have two questions. Where are they at in costumes, and why? Well, go with that one first. Where are you at when they're dressed in these costumes? Because obviously he's not going out in public in this. Are you in some secret location when they're dressing in these costumes?
No, it's prearranged. So, like, I'll give you an example. On Halloween 1976, Oaks, Bednar, and Monson were in Halloween costumes inside a house that I knocked on with my Mormon friend. And they knew I was coming to that door, made sure I was coming to that door. They invited us in. This is 1976. They didn't really have a lot of training. It says, don't go in strangers' houses. Closed the door behind me, and here it come. Bednar was dressed in Joker makeup with a Batman plastic mask on the top. So there's something there. So a Joker doing good, hiding in the cloth of good. Ooh, yeah.
How old were you then? You said
8
the year, but
8 years old.
8 years.
1976, the bicentennial was a big year. We had a lot of paranormal stuff that year. It's the United States' 200th birthday.
Well, I want to talk about that experience, but I also want to ask you, so, well, from my knowledge, the Mormons and the Catholics work together in their satanic ritual partnerships. As far as I know, Mormonism and Catholicism, Freemasons, Satanism, and the Cabal are the 5 branches of the Illuminati that basically kind of run everything. And so, it seems like they would be working. Obviously, they were there at the ritual as well. But are you not aware of that?
It's not that I'm not aware of it, as I truly believe that the Mormons have made it kind of framed the Catholics and massaged the data that was coming out to make it look like the Catholics were doing this kind of stuff. And I honestly don't believe that. And I'm not here to refute you or refute anybody else. I have my own experiences. And what I saw is the Catholics very much want the Mormons to be put to an end doing this. And they try, because I've met.
Well, they came after them. So is it a competition? Because the Catholic Church is older than the Mormon Church.
You're saying that the Catholics did satanic ritual abuse 1,500 years ago. We have evidence. I mean, and there wasn't good times back then. I understand it was dark ages. I get it. You don't think like I do? Die. That's not the way we are now, or they are now. And I didn't use the word we to make it sound like I really am a hidden Catholic, because I'm not. I have no religion. I'm a secular Jew, and I'll die a secular Jew.
So go back to this experience when you were 8 years old and you came to this house. Is this in California?
Yes, La Habra. No, that's Lakewood, California.
So are these Mormons, Oaks, and Bednar, are they living in California?
No,
What are they doing?
they were often traveling to meet me in paranormal events. I'm a big deal in their world for some reason. They made me. I'm one of the untouchables. You might be a terminology that you are not familiar with. That's one of the reasons why I can talk like this and look outside my window and I don't see anybody coming to shoot me. It's because they truly believe that I will be killed on February 3rd, 2046, which got skipped and changed to February 3rd, 2049. There's a 3-year extension by taking that 6 at the end of 2046 and turning it into a 9. And that changes the Hebrew date and changes the whole confirmational bias, which is why they allowed me to have a second remote view at that 3-day event in 1985 and extend my life, because there was value in it, because my death date is associated with a 9.2 earthquake in San Diego that wipes out Coronado. Coronado was in paranormal fashion, wanted to know when they would be ended. Well, they got ended with a paranormal event, an earthquake, and it walked.
So what was going on at this house when you were 8 years old that you were invited? Why were they dressed up? What was all playing out there?
So we were knocking. I was following this Mormon kid that I was with, who ended up sexually assaulting me all along the way, drugging me along the way. I had no idea that was going on under the direction of his parents, with hidden cameras and stuff everywhere. And I got to see all that at the age of 17, and I had no clue. And then I walked away at 17, not knowing that had ever happened, but I knew that kid's name. He was my best friend, but he was 3 or 4 years older and a Mormon. So I was his little toy, I guess. And they wanted to let a kid that was older have a little toy. And I'm sure that kid's dead. I think that kid's daddy died in 1987. I got to see it. We can come back to that later. All my stuff is when we start talking, it just opens up new memories, and it's like, okay, now where do I go? Which one? What were we talking about? That's right.
So was he the boy that was abusing you? Was he part of like organized trauma to cause you the PTSD under assignment?
Yes, and I don't know. It wasn't called PTSD back then. It was about, can we do this to this kid and he not know anything and tell on us the next day? And how come he can't tell on us drug? And what did that particular drug do? What about this particular drug? That drug was taken 10 minutes before. This drug is taken 10 minutes after. And then they come by the next day after trauma and the drugging, and you wake up and they know when you're going to wake up, whether they got hidden microphones in the house or whatever's going on. They come over and the first thing they start doing, what'd you do last night? And they're using my eye patterns. I'm a kid. They're an authority figure. They got this Mormon badge on. Sometimes they use real law badges, and it's like, what the hell? And they're going to drug me again after that interview, so I won't even remember it. And this is really interesting stuff, the way they mess with human minds.
Yeah. So how are they? If you're 8 years old and they're doing this, and you're drugged, and you go home and you go to bed, and they're coming in your house. Like, does your mom know they're there?
Mm, sometimes they use a lot of force. That you open the door, you see the Mormons are at the door, and hello, ma'am, and you. I don't know if we even used peoples back then. I can remember an apartment with a people, but you see a Mormon in the door, and you open the door, and hey, can we come in and visit with you? No, no. And next thing you know, the door's open, and you're pushed up against the wall. You got that gas mask on. See, the gas mask. There's a surgical gas that they figure out how to use, that they can take away a couple of minutes while the mask is on, but you still have memory of the day. And when they walk away, you're dizzy and stuff, and you're like, "What the hell just happened?" And you just kind of like go back your day. They figured that one out.
Is that
It's
the stuff they use at the dentist? Do you know what it is? What it's called? What the gas
Oh
is?
no, I don't. But that's probably one of those gases. They there's a variety of them in the military. They showed me like 15 or 20. They had a cute little professional pack. There's a little kit. They had a wooden system with holes in the top, and each one of them had attached a small bottle of gas with multiple lines coming off of it and valves that quicken it. And they go, and they were labeled A, B, C, D, E, and they go A1, A2, A3. And so they were following instructions on a video while the gas is attached to a victim. Following that video, that's another video, and they're wanting them to remember that portion of the video, but not remember that portion of the video as well. Remember that portion of the video, and they got really, really good at that. And so that 10 years later, as it pops up, you the first thing you might think that, well, God was talking to you in the temple, because they did that in the temple. That's how they give proof that God is in the temple. These people that walk out of the temple, maybe there really is a real Mormon God, I don't know, but what I saw was manufactured visions. So you get forced into a special room, shown a projection. This is Jesus. I want you to marry such and such on this date. You walk out of that room. You remember you saw Jesus in the temple. You don't remember it was a film on the wall, and you don't remember the mask coming over you because you had twice the dose of gas when the mask came on. They lowered the dose as you saw the vision on the wall. And then as they were fading it away, they're yelling into your head how they want you to remember this when you remember it the next morning or the next day. And then you walk away taking a pill that when you go home and wake up the next day, the whole day is fuzzy, and someone has to ask you, "What did you do yesterday?" "Oh, I went to the temple." "Oh, I had a vision to marry." And so it starts popping up and popping up. They got really good at it. And so I'm trying to explain it the best I can.
So, okay, so when you were a child and all of this was going on, was it just in your neighborhood? And most of this was happening in your neighborhood and at your house, where these Mormons were, handling you, having you sexually abused, drugged, watching you, filming you. This was the people who are in the high up Mormon church now, Bednar, Oaks. Who else can you name that's in, the higher echelons of the church right now that you saw involved when you were a child?
Okay, I was listening to you, and that was loaded stuff, and you pulled up all kinds of names of where it happened, and then you started talking about names, and so we got to do one or two of those. So, I mean, I have strong memories of Queen Mary event, Disneyland, multiple locations, multiple years as an adult, as a kid, Knott's Berry Farm, Six Flags Magic Mountains, what it's called now. SeaWorld was a big one in San Diego in 1975, 6, 7, and then we did it back again in 13. I'm pretty sure it was more clandestine. No, it was 2021, and that was much more clandestine. And I was an
What was
adult.
happening in those locations? What was
Multiple
going on?
multiple filmings with drugged events of repressed memories of what happened right before this ride, or what happened before that ride, or what happened in this particular room. Along with, you walk away, I had Disneyland, I had a fun time, my whole class went to Disneyland, and then the next day they want to know who remembered what, because certain rides, each kid was going to get tagged with a certain memory event that gets chemically repressed. uh,
So when you're talking about these events and these memories of events, the memories, what is happening in those memories?
So I'll give you an example of Disneyland. So we're at Space Mountain. This is 1994. I'm at Disneyland with my family and my first wife. We're in the line to go to Space Mountain. We get pulled into another room in the line to Space Mountain, which might have been another ride. I can't remember all that. And so we sit in these chairs that move and go back and forth while a video is shown on the screen. And that's a real ride. I don't know the name of it, but that particular one, and the people that were in line in front of me and in line after me got pulled into this room, maybe 20 people. And while this was going on, right before it started, professional people came in, whether they were, I think they were Mormons, came in, offered a drink to me a cocktail drink and to my wife, and they had it on a silver platter, and they're always in little cute little uniforms and stuff, and it's a drug drink. And then they have headphones. I always get headphones, so I get audio instructions. And they were telling me I was going to divorce my wife and all this kind of stuff on the date that I was going to divorce her, and I was going to marry a Mormon, and a prophet had a vision future for me. And by the time I can spit my drink out and throw the headphones in and figure out what the hell, the next thing you know, I'm in a Disneyland where I'm finishing watching the rest of the ride. And there's a person always there to steer me and guide me. And if I like, what the hell was that? And I start getting angry or start pushing that memory before it completely fade. There's a show of force, remind me there's a gun in the hands or something like that. And then as they see that I'm just back to normal again, trying to figure out what I missed, then they disappear.
Okay, so back to when you were a child and all of
And
this
that was
was
adult.
happening.
That was an adult. I gave you an adult
Yeah,
example.
that one was an adult. Yeah, but before we were talking about as a child,
Mhm.
when what members of the church that are still involved in the church were involved in this program that was handling and
So
abusing, taking you to these weird dressing up as a clown or a joker, all of that stuff. Like what Mormons in the higher echelons were
almost
there?
almost all the prophets and apostles that have been around since 1968, with the exception of David McKay. If I met him, I was less than 2 years old, and only from being shown video of it at age 17. Almost all of them, and each one of them, as we bring their names up, it's going to pull up a different video in my mind of where we were. But so, an example of a kid, we talk about multiple things when you start talking. So, as a kid, I went to Disneyland, to Tom Sawyer's Island. If you've ever been to Tom Sawyer's Island, there's some rocks that are tunnels through there, and I'm walking through this tunnel, and next thing I know, I come across 3 or 4 Mormons. I think Monson, Bednar's always around. He's the muscle because he's only like 10, 15 years older than me. And he's willing to get mean as a young 20-year-old to an 8-year-old kid. He don't have a problem with that. And as a kid, I kind of learned how to fear the 20-somethings more than I did the 50-somethings. The old men usually shouldn't be dangerous, but they were. But they used Bednar was the muscle, just like Monson was the muscle back in the 50s and the 60s and became an apostle for it. Bednar became an apostle and becoming a prophet like Monson did based on his muscle. Like Nelson became an apostle and a prophet based off his medical knowledge of drugs that cause erections, which were giving the old men who had sexual dysfunction. He knew a surgical gas and a surgical drug before the little blue pill ever came out. I forget what it's called.
Viagra.
Viagra. Before Viagra ever came out, they caused chemical priapism. So I'm on video and 17 years old, suffering from that they gave it in a cookie form. So yeah, they cause erections that don't go away for a long time. There's scary shit. If you've never been exposed to that, and of course the answer to it is to have a sex, and then it makes it go away.
Yeah.
God gave me this erection before anybody knew what Viagra was, and it won't go away. You have to have sex with me. And they use that, and then they're real forceful about all that stuff. Anyways,
Okay.
Tom Sawyer's Island. I'm in the labyrinth. I'm going through. Next thing I come around, I'm Bednar, Monson. I think it was Benson, and they got a girl about my age, and they tell me that they're going to give me my first kiss with a girl, and the girl just French kisses me and tongue, and they've got a video camera. Their big cameras bigger back then. They weren't little small ones, and then of course they had the best stuff. And so the smaller cameras started popping. I saw the first handheld one in 76, 77, but it was still a bit bigger. And I think it came from Japan. They always said it came from Japan, when we say we didn't see stuff. Anyways, I got my first French kiss from a Mormon girl, and I had no knowledge of it the next day at school, and then drugged again. Stuff like that, all kinds of stuff like
So
that.
what would be their intention of doing that? Why would they want to give you a kiss and then take away just to see if they could? Because they were testing?
They predicted I would be a Mormon. I would be a Mormon as an adult. They predicted that I would convert into Mormonism, and they presented that in a paranormal fashion as 100% facts. And I'm not religious. I've never been religious. And if a ghost doesn't just appear in front of me and command me to become a Mormon, even then I'd probably be like, what kind of drug was that? Uh, what kind of a delusion was that? I don't believe in that kind of stuff. Anyways, when at 17 years old, when they guaranteed I would be a Mormon, and I'm looking at the military and they're like, yeah, we want you to be a Mormon, man. It's really good stuff. It's all about the mind, psychology, all that kind of stuff. And you're living on the West Coast and all that kind of stuff. And like, what? How do you know that? It's like, because we're going to help you remember enough to get to the next level to make this paranormal thing appear to be real. Like, okay.
So as far as I know, well, I mean, my knowledge is that I in the Mormon temple, we wear the compass and the square. You're aware of this. And so, and the garments, the compass and the square on the garments. And Mormonism is just essentially a version of Freemasonry. And so, and I know the basis, one of the best kept hidden secrets of Freemasonry and Mormonism is the sodomy rituals between men for power. And so when you're talking about they're giving these Viagra and these drugs and these pills and stuff, and they're taking you off in secret, are you saying that there's like orgiastic sex happening in these experiences? What are you saying is going on there?
So again, I got a little bit of a conflict. I just want to put some memories in there. Manly P. Hall, Master Mason, I met him a couple of different times, including the military event. He's the one that predicted Kennedy dying before Kennedy died. And I put that on my Facebook too. He had a real problem with Mormons claiming to be Masons, said it was all a bunch of crap, and dedicated his to putting a stop to it, and walked away from that room when he saw what they were doing and drugged again. And then he ended up dying on the same day Brigham Young died. And just as predicted in paranormal fashion, I think it was in 1987 at that concert, and that might get public, that video of that. The Chevy Chase's National Lampoon's Vacation had come out, and Grandma had died, and she was on that rocking chair, and they drove her across the desert. They did the same thing with Manly P. Hall, the Master Mason. He died in his car, and his wife or younger wife or whatever it was, whatever the story was, drove him through the deserts of Las Vegas dead until he was discovered, or he was found and probably murdered. So I don't really know that. I mean, you're pulling up a brand new memory, but anyways, Manly P. Hall, most of the Masons, all the Masons I met, said the Mormons weren't Masons, and they were claiming to be Masons and hijacked it. So I don't.
Well, yeah. So that is factual, that there's a dispute between them because the original Freemasonry got mad at Joseph Smith for implementing it into the temple and taking all of their symbolism and creating his own version of elect Freemasonry. And so it's not necessarily, of course, they're going to have their disputes between them because Freemasonry has its original claim on Freemasonry. But Mormonism and the fact that Joseph Smith was a Freemason, all of the early prophets were Freemasons, and that you wear the compass and the square, and that the initiations that you get within the Mormon temple are also based on the initiations of Freemasonry, just done in a religious setting, you know.
Second, I got to get the dogs quiet. Come on. Come on.
But I'm sure that, and you know, they don't, the powers that be behind the scenes don't necessarily want to be affiliated or associated or have that knowledge or knowing that Mormonism is a form of Freemasonry and that they do work side by side behind the scenes. Because all of my brothers as Mormons are also in the secret CIA and also a part of, you know, their own kind of form of Freemasonry within the Mormon cult.
You talk about the Mormon CIA. You're the first person I've ever heard of that talks about the secret CIA, that ones that aren't really CIA but think they're CIA. Yeah, that's Mormonism. There's some Mormon. You're in the CIA, but it's so secret. I can't give you any paperwork to prove you in it. I can't pay you because you're clandestine. Yeah, that's the classic David Bednar. But I don't know what CIA.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is within the Mormon church is it's their own little thing to protect their own little cult and their own little secrets. Obviously, it doesn't extend. I mean, it extends throughout the church, and it has a name, and I can't remember what it was. It used to be public. My mom told me about it because my family's involved in all of this, and they had outed it at first. It publicly, how they explained what it was is it's essentially like a neighborhood watch program where you're making sure that your neighbors are keeping their covenants. And if anybody's breaking the rules of the church, then you tell on your neighbor, call your bishop. But essentially, what it really is a reporting system so that all of the pedophiles within the church aren't getting caught, and that if anybody defects from the religion, which is what happened to me, as soon as I defected and realized what was going on within my family, then they send the local police after you and drain your bank account and set you up and frame you for charges and try to shut you up and put you in the psych ward and want to give you a bunch of medications, which I refused to take anything when I was there and wouldn't take anything. But so I've seen from my own experience how it functions within. So I know it's a real thing. I'm not necessarily saying it's part of the real CIA. I know it doesn't matter what CIA or branch you're referring to. It's all corrupt, but what do you know about that functioning within the Mormon church?
The ones I'm talking about that claim to be part of a secret CIA, I call it Mormon CIA. They're not CIA. They may want to be CIA. They may think they're CIA. It's just a way of keeping their secret and thinking they're patriotic and loyal and doing it. No, it's not CIA. CIA people get salaries, or they come across as people like me that come out and go, no, I'm supposed to talk. I'm getting paid military benefits to pay my benefits really well. This is what I'm supposed to be doing.
Well, I do believe that there is non-recorded funds that go throughout Mormon neighborhoods, religions, wards, states, to support people, especially like with my brother, for instance. He was an attorney. He never worked. My dad and all of my brothers are, I shouldn't say he never worked. He didn't have like a real job that was like a bread and butter job. And my brothers all did real estate with him, like commercial real estate developing. And so they would go long seasons while they were working on a project with no income. And they all lived in huge houses and, into really shady stuff, had their hands in a whole bunch of different stuff. But there would be money that would come up. And I know within Freemasonry, that's one of the things that is shared amongst bloodliners, Freemasonry, Illuminati, and within the, these groups in the church, that there's funds that support them where there's no money. Like it comes out of thin air, it's not going to be on a government record, but there's definitely funds, whether it's you're being paid to be in the CIA or just like, hey, I can't pay my rent this month, or I need to buy a house, or, there's stuff going on. Definitely. I saw.
What I saw was very, very cheap. In other words, if you want to own somebody, you got to give them money pretty much. Money will help you to own them. Religion and money. Oh, yeah. And what they did was, you're going to invest $1,000 of this money that you're going to get on this date, or that you already have in your savings account. In other words, they know your information. They know if you've got money. They know if it's in a savings account. You're going to sell this stock and buy this stock because they're planning on running this stock up. And so you're going to get a 4, 5, 6 return on your investment. They give you $1,000 to put in this particular stock and buy this many shares on this day. They did a lot of that way.
Because it's all controlled, so they can pay you. It's like essentially money laundering. They're controlling how you get the money, so it looks legitimate.
That's a big jump, really fast. But they're using the smaller amounts of money to get greater money in the future by investing, by doing it that way. They're taking their hands out of it by using your own money, or by telling not to pay tithing for 3 or 4 years, which might be $10,000 to you, and to use your tithing for this particular purpose, and to never admit to it, and you're good with God because they said so. And if David Bednar said that to somebody like me that believed David Bednar was an apostle, I would have no problem not paying my tithing for 3 years, going to my bishop interview, and walking away with the temple recommend. I think you would.
Okay, well, explain to me so it's interesting because you talk about like, you believe this person is actually an apostle, right? And but you also behind the scenes are having knowledge of their secret sex ceremonies and murders going on, but yet you believe this person is an apostle while you're Mormon. So where does the mind fuckery come in of why somebody believes that this person is a God-given apostle and anointed and whatever they are, when they know that they're doing these nefarious deeds also?
From what I saw, the nefarious deeds are so well covered up. They're all drug events. They're all recorded and kept known. They know who saw what, when it was video recorded, they know who saw what video when, and they keep track of that. And so all these people that are claiming David Bednar is an apostle, if they actually did witness him having sex with somebody or saw a murder, they don't remember that part of it, or that part is really faint. And because it's really faint, they're not going to go all in and say, I know I saw David Bednar kill somebody. It's just a small little flash of memory. They don't want to do, what's that, bad dream or whatever. My
So you're saying the ritual abuse that is rampant and going on within the Mormon church, and the child trafficking that, pretty much that tons of people are aware of is happening now at the highest echelons of the Mormon church, is that most of the people that are involved in all of that stuff have absolutely no recollection of it whatsoever, and function within the church as if they don't know that that's a part of their life in the dead of the night or whenever, that they're involved in all of this secret stuff.
From my experience, they were all drugged events. If I would have had one bad drugged event in my adult life, I would never go back to that place. I would never have pulled up enough memory of going, wait a second, I'm in a secret government project. No. Oh, no, no, no. I see a murder or a rape, or someone threatened to murder or rape me and threatened that I won't remember the next day. I won't be back there. So
how long did all of this stuff happen to you throughout your life before you started remembering or being shown videos that and being able to maintain, like, okay, all of these things happened to me, where it wasn't like, here's a video and then they erase it and give you another drug and you don't remember it again the next day? Now that your memories are being maintained, how long and like what age did that begin at?
Honestly, it only began in the last 5 years. I wrote a document on it and signed it. And see, Trump had just become elected president. I just started sleeping a little bit better because all these election cycles, because in 1985, we were predicting the 40th president, the 41st president. That's an easy one to predict. Whether he got one term or two might depend on whether he gave us a particular set of words and sequences. But 42, we predicted 43, 44, not the actual names. We predicted that the United States would still be here. The earth hadn't ended, and we had a 44th president, and we could go in our mind to that time in our life. And we had data in our earpiece to say, I'm this age, I live in this state, and done it a paranormal way, presented that way in an acting skill set, modeling, pretending, and then walking away not knowing what happened and being told to move there, and then having part of that memory access just enough at the door for them to convince me, yeah, I am going to divorce my wife because I'm going to go marry a Mormon. And I look at him, marry a Mormon? I'm not religious. Oh yeah, I remember that in drug. I love that stuff. It was the coolest thing in the world. I don't know what I would have turned into if I had not been drugged and handled this way. I probably have a PhD somewhere or something like you. You're
How old were you? Can I ask how old you are now?
55, January 21st, 1968, 12:01 a.m.
And are you sure that that's your real age, or have you been given different ages throughout your life to think you are?
That was another test case we did in 1985. It would be very difficult to undo my memory on my birthday and how old I am. I know I've been keeping track of my years, year by year by year, and you couldn't drug me at every birthday. I'm sure they messed with some people's heads. And there was a famous woman that was a movie actor who suddenly became 3 years older in her adult life. And I think we were part of that. I don't remember. It's a famous one, and I'm sure it'll come out in the movie.
You're 50, you said you're 55?
Yes, ma'am.
And so 5 years ago, when you were 50 years old, you started holding and maintaining these memories?
Maybe 6, yes. And I contacted Homeland Security almost immediately.
But it's been 10 years since, let's see, what
11,
happened?
11 years since my memories were professionally stimulated at the Veterans Administration by my main handler, Dr. Alan Kirkendall. He was my handler from 1985 until about 2013, right before I was sent for Aliyah to Israel, and where I was debriefed for my role in the Arab Spring. The Mormons, it's a whole other topic, and it's classified. But I was debriefed for my role in the Arab Spring and sent back to marry the Mormon wife that I was told by Mormons to divorce, remarry her, and come to where I am now. I was supposed to live at 911 Pacific Avenue, number 2, Crescent City. I did make that time check. I did live at that address, and then moved to my next address now. And it's a lot harder to find my address. They've done a pretty good job. I don't hire professionals to scrub my stuff off the internet. Somebody's doing something. So even the
So you haven't had contact with any handlers for 10 years?
No, ma'am. My memories, my memories must be very pleasant to them. And I'm not spitting at anything I'm not supposed to. And I can't make the dog stop barking because I got the whole. Can you give me just a second?
Yeah, sure.
It bugs me.
Yeah, you said a lot of stuff there. I think of like about a million questions because you throw out a bunch of different parts. You're talking about your wife. So I'd like to go there next after you talk about your handlers.
Okay, I had two handlers from 1985 onwards until 2013. I don't take handling instructions anymore. If I look out my door and recognize them as being there, I grab a big baseball bat before I open the door. They know
So they
that.
still come?
Huh?
They are still coming? When was the
Oh
last
no.
time you had
No, no,
that?
no, 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 no. Most people are scared of me. I'm not. I'm a big guy. I swim 3 hours a day, 5 days a week. I'm muscular. I may have some bad joints and stuff. I can't take your neck out with my leg like I used to, but as a kick 6 feet away. But my hands are deadly, and I throw a weapon in it, and it's over. And they know that. And I don't have
So
a.
did you threaten them? Is that why they stopped contacting you? Because you fought or resisted?
No, I wasn't supposed. That's my contract. So I'm supposed to take those chemical hits by those two people and not fight, because if I did fight, I would leave a bruise or a police trail, and it would be much harder to make me forget all that the next day.
So
So
your contract is just up. That's why they
and
don't
my
contact.
contract for being drugged, my contract for being drugged is up. The VA was the last one, and then the DevGru or Red Cell or whatever group you want to call that, Naval Special Operations Command, did the last drugging on me July 4th, 5th, and 6th, 2012. It said I was drugged again in Aliyah. Anyway, and they showed me what happened at the Veterans Administration. In other words, you almost have to be drugged to be shown what's in your mind to pop up 10, 15 years later in a very bad way, and for it to show up as still trauma over time and hellacious, but it doesn't turn into a traumatic event for me, other than the memory.
So
So,
why does if the Mormons are involved in this, these high up echelons that have dealt with you since you were a kid, why do they not care that you are exposing all of this now, almost as if they want you to?
well, from a controlled opposition, if I'm controlled opposition from their point of view, and in this psychological operation, it's spun back and forth so many different ways, make your head spin. So they're supposed to probably spend $1 billion in legal fees on this. I end up being psychiatrically committed according to their vision, and I shut up, and it all just goes away. They get a bunch of new electronic tools and laws that keep people from me from like making up stuff or putting stuff like this on the internet, and it gets scrubbed instantaneously. And most people are having problems posting certain content on the internet, and it just goes away really quick, or they get their YouTube account shut down just by using certain words. It's anti-religion. It's against the community standards. All this kind of stuff, and they're supposed to get some new laws out of this. And so Bednar really does think that my Facebook profile, people reading my Facebook profile, start shooting up Mormon churches, and that leads to changes, and I get committed psychiatrically over all this kind of stuff. And this is part of his vision. So they're allowing somewhat this to go on because it's part of the vision. This is controlled up.
Bednar's controlled vision of what his plan is to do with you down the road?
Uh, well, that's part of it. I mean, if they really want to make the original remote view active, I can't die till 2046 or 2049. Nothing says that nothing says that I can't be in a psychiatric hospital where I am killed or die on that day. And the only way you can know somebody's going to die on a certain day is two ways. One, if they die before then, don't announce it until then and put it on the paper. You got to have a lot of power to do that. Or two, make sure they die on that day.
So
So
my family, I know my sister has claimed a title to be an apocalypse architect within the Mormon church. So is that what you see them doing with these false visions and planning and setting these dates in the future? Are they architecturally planning the apocalypse?
Absolutely, they think they are. They think they're planning the earthquakes. So you might have got into the Eric Smith thing a little bit, and so I can clarify that on the Eric Smith interview. So at my endowment, as you go to the circle, right before you cross over the veil, they do a prayer for names on the roll or whatever. There's a silver box. Some people said the silver box contained names to pray for. They showed me the silver box before they had it in my right hand. When they opened the top of it, it had 100 or so finger bones in it. So if you think of a finger bone as having a birth, a date, an anniversary, a wedding, all that stuff on the 3 calendars using 4 ciphers, each finger bone has a lot of numbers on it. And so we casted an earthquake in Japan that we were going to use for the Arab Spring interrogation of Al-Kuwaiti to give him a paranormal experience. That earthquakes happen in Japan all the time. We're going to predict one in an exact way, an exact day. But we won't do it until you get to Benghazi and have your team formed that's getting ready to go to Tripoli, and then we'll put it on the news. We'll show an earthquake in Japan. Sure enough, Fukushima 9.2 happened on March 11th, and that's Nancy Reagan would end up being buried on that day later on. But March, and Thomas Monson got buried on the Haiti earthquake date. Ford and Truman died on the Boxing Day earthquake. There's so much earthquake stuff there, but those are the big ones. I'm not saying, okay, everybody that died to find an earthquake because there's so many earthquakes. I'm talking about the big ones and the big people.
So you're saying that they in the temple are using, because I know like President Nelson, he's skull and bones. So this is skull and bones black magic that you're describing.
Very, very much.
And so you have these bones on the altar, and everything going on in the temple is essentially black magic and a seance of some type. And that they're using these bones to create earthquakes and events.
So to predict earthquakes, make them think there's earthquakes. So in that box that I was carrying that had thousands of 100 bones, each bone has at least 4 births and 4 deaths. So you got pretty much all the dates on the calendars covered, and you put it into a spreadsheet and it tells you exactly what's there. But for example, Rex Lee, Reagan's attorney general, who died on his birthday, and his son was born on his death day. Mike Lee, the senator, 311. It's in my Facebook profile. His bone, 311. He died on 311. Mike Lee was born on biblical 311, which is 10 days ago. That bone would have been taken out after the Fukushima earthquake registered a 3-1 and said that's the date. And that would have been put into the next box of bones that's got a fewer amount of bones to give you a more concentrated fine tune. And it's not till you get to the year 2121 that they get really, really accurate according to paranormal stuff, because the world ends at 2121 or 2145. If you go to the world ending on 2145, it's predicted as 6/16, June 16th, which is the real 666 from the Dead Sea Scrolls. It's also the day after Bednar's birthday, but on the Julian calendar, it would be Bednar's Julian birthday because there's no leap years in the year 2100. So
okay, so let me try to understand without all the dates and everything, just to make it simple for people to understand. With this box of bones, what are they doing? What do they think they're doing? I know it's all based on dates, but they're predicting or they're planning or causing.
So July 16, 2005, my endowment, Senator Harry Reid, David Bednar, and me are all in this little group doing the little circle thing. There's other people there too. They're all CIA or military that were in my ward. My ward had a whole lot of those kind of people in it, however they got there.
So you basically have your own little scheduled ceremonies in the temple that nobody else comes to. It's just for you guys. So that there's not.
It could be that way. Mine wasn't that way. Mine was selected way ahead of time, known the date, and they made sure the people that were there were allowed or not allowed. So if you weren't supposed to be there and you called to make a reservation at the temple, there wasn't any reservations available that day. Or
okay, so they're scheduling and planning reservations with certain people, secret CIA within the church.
Anyways, with the ritual that I saw that we're talking about, that we needed an earthquake in Japan for my Fukushima event that was predicted. And then David Bednar pauses in the temple. He actually had a green screen set up behind him on a pedestal, like you would see a whiteboard or a film projector screen or something. It was a green screen. It was being filmed, and he would say, "And the earthquake happened," and he kept moving his lips, but there was no sound that comes out of it. That gets enhanced and filled when they rewatch it. You see how we can do that way?
So they're plugging in dates after the fact. So it looks like
yes. And when they show it, the projection, the green screen is going to have the actual earthquake happening in Japan in the news event. So it shows when you're watching this film from 2005, it's got a film within a film in it with an audio overlay that makes it very accurate. It was
Okay, so
enough.
you're saying, let me try to put this in layman's terms. So you're saying that essentially what they're doing is they're using technology, they're using skull and bones to try to predict, but they aren't always accurate. So it's like fake black magic.
And it's extending it down the road. So we had to get the earthquake. They don't happen all the time. So now we have Rex Lee's finger. Maybe by the next reading, we'll have Mike Lee's finger to go with it to make it even more concentrated, to be 2 311 bones that are genetically related in there and had positions of high power in the U.S. government. Those will be in the silver box in the year 2100 that predicts the 9.2 that ends the last 9.2 ever before the earth gets blown up.
Well, what do they think these bones are doing? What are they doing with the bones? Why do they need these bones to do this if they're not even accurately predicting? And if they're using, technology and videos and green screens and filling in and lying and saying they're prophetic, and if they're not, what is the purpose of needing these bones if it's not real black magic?
Because everyone thinks it's real, except the ones that are directing it. The ones that are participating and making the green screens, with the exception of Bednar, are just doing what everybody's been told to do. They're just doing their little piece. It's very compartmentalized. Everybody has a little bitty piece to it. Only the Bednar people up know the whole picture, and that it's all been fabricated.
But the general authorities are essentially puppeteers for the Satanic Kingdom to try to look prophetic, like they're planning or prophetically predicting apocalyptic events.
I don't know if the general authorities. I don't know enough about any of that. I started digging up a couple of those. I call them digging them up. A virtual autopsy by going through Finder Grave is the easiest way. Who knows if that's accurate or not? That could have been all put. They knew I was going to use Finder Grave, so they could be all put their bad dates. I don't know. I don't have the resources to go get the actual death date of every single person by official U.S. government records, because that's what counts when you come to these dates of times that you want to. Is that a sync? Did he die on his wife's birthday? Die on his own birthday? You have to have the actual dates. So I did the best I could. But Find a Grave, you go in there and you find a person. It'll have all their family connected. Somebody has organized that and put it in a pattern. Well, they have all that. And so you've seen that.
With all of that, though?
I'm sorry, what?
Well, you talk about, you use the term not supernatural. What is it that you use?
Paranormal. The undefined.
So, and you don't believe in spiritual things necessarily, or spirits. So if it's not black magic, if it's paranormal, if it's also technology, what is it that they're actually doing?
So Russ Targ was, he's still alive. He wrote he's in the movie Third Eye Spy or something. You should look that one up and look him up. And he's got a weird one. He's got the same birthday as Anton LaVey, 411, the information number, which is the date Jesus died backwards on the Hebrew calendars, 114. So Russ Targ was a scientist that had paranormal experience, and he wanted it chronicled. And if you could show it to him electronically or numerically, he was much more likely to believe it. And the Mormons were using that to get into those minds. And even me, you look at it and you go, wow, these people died each other's birthdays. That's murder. And I'm only thinking that because that was what I saw. If I wouldn't have seen it, I'd been like, that is really trippy that Hinckley was born 623, and 9/11/2001 was the 6-month 23rd day in the biblical calendar, and he died 127, like buildings 1, 2, and 7 fall. That's weird. Wow. And all of them, they're all like that. I put them there like that because that was the data they told me to say when I did the paranormal vision of when they died.
But so what are they doing? What is paranormal for them? What is the paranormal activity that they're participating in?
The group that I was in the military defined religion as paranormal. It's the undefined. It's unproven. That there's no proof.
But are they actually doing magic? Because I know Joseph Smith was thought to be a magician, and I know most of these cults, the Freemason cults and the Illuminati cults, and Mormonism has a big history of Egyptian magic involved. And I know a lot of the survivors that I have communicated with are aware of their practicing black magic and sorcery and things like that. So did you ever witness anything that was actually real paranormal, that there wasn't some like just green screen behind them, you know? Like, did you see
No,
them practicing these things?
no, I've never experienced any absolutely paranormal thing in my life. It was all drugs and all fake to make people think there was a real paranormal event or religion or whatever word you want to use to describe the undefined. No,
Tell me.
the whole script is all about, well, we are following a script. It comes from the year 2145 at the end of the earth. It's the last presidential download back in time. And they've been following this script all along the way. And that's their whole outline. So aliens crashed on Earth, leaving behind some technology. We got a hold of the technology. It was a gift to us to keep us from destroying ourselves. So we've seen the future. We've seen the end of the Earth, and we have a chance to undo it. And the Mormons won't allow that. That's really, or the Mormons got a hold of this technology and they stopped it in the future because all the downloads from the future stopped all along the way as we were making this film. It all comes to an end. It all comes to an end, and we get back to real time, back to our life. So, and they played graphics and audios like a reverse sound. You just left the future. You're coming back home in your real time. And the drugs are wearing off, and you're like, "Where am I? Oh, I'm at a Grateful Dead concert. Wow."
Who
What
could possibly plan all of this and architect all of this? Like, who is structuring all of
It took
this?
power. It took power. It took money. It took time. It took a lot of it took a lot of power. It took a lot of. You could do it with if you had a couple $1,000,000 and you had a plan and authority. In other words, guns and drugs, and you were confident of all the. Nowadays, you want to come knock on somebody's door and mess with them. You got to know all the cameras, all the Ring doorbells that are along the way that might pick up you doing something like that, and you got to be prepared to go deal with that.
Okay,
Much so they get you in a room in a hospital or in a prison where they do have control of the settings. And when you walk out of that and you're there the next day, if you start talking about what happened the day before, they can make sure you don't talk about it again.
okay, so I want to go back to your childhood because we didn't lay a super good foundation there with you were essentially being handled, you feel like, since you were 2. They were traumatizing you. You were witnessing murders and things like that. And like, for instance, the day that you showed up at somebody's house and Bednar and Oaks were there and had their faces painted.
Halloween 1976. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. So this Halloween evening, you show up, their faces are painted. What happens? What are they doing?
So I had been instructed to be a robot. And we had taken cardboard boxes and had put foil on the outside of them. And then we had a 9-volt battery with an electrical wire, and I had a light and all this kind of stuff. Before I left, Monson came by and had me write down the order of the prophecy inside my robot, spliced my wire, and gave me a light that I could read inside my robot. And that as I came across and was asked questions about who was going to be the prophet, I was supposed to read that list of names. That was, and it was probably 4 or 5 times that night I gave those names, and I kept talking to my friend like, what is this all about? And don't worry, you're going to get extra fun, and then, so we're going to take you to a Dodger game, you're going to get to go do this, you're going to get to do that. And then of course at the end of the night I'm drugged and don't remember the next day, and I get to my robot costume, and they come by the next morning and start talking to me, and they ask me my robot costume, and they say, well, what's this? And they show the inside of the robot costume, and they show that 4 or 5 names of who's going to be the prophet and what order it's going to be. They didn't give dates. It was just the name in order, name in the order. And it was like
Who were they?
Monson, Hinckley, Nelson, Monson, Hinckley, Nelson, Monson, Hinckley, Nelson. Those were the 3. And there was a 4th one in there, and it got crossed out. I think Packer got crossed out. It was Monson, Hinckley, Packer, Nelson, and then the second reading said Packer got crossed out. And so I read, and I did exactly what I was supposed to do. They came back the next morning and showed me this. I didn't remember Halloween was the day before. And all of a sudden I'm like, yeah, it's Halloween. I'm kind of going along, and I see that, and that starts triggering memories. And then they drugged me again. And
So this is when you're 8 years old,
and
and
that
you're not Mormon yet. You were a Catholic. And so what are these Mormon men doing with a little 8-year-old kid trying to figure out who's the next prophet? Like, what is that about?
well, they're using me and they're basically creating a day night. And they thought that they would be able to get me to do anything they want. And when we got to the military event and I was doing paranormal stuff, and when the military told me to do abnormal behavior, I did abnormal behavior. I would strip my clothes off if told to in front of a camera. I would say inappropriate things to someone if told to with an earpiece. And that was because I was in the future as a Mormon and they had control of me. So
So, but why would they want you to predict the next prophet? What, I mean, it's not like they're
it
show
wasn't
that.
it wasn't me predicting the prophet. It was making it look like I was predicting the prophet by reading information that they gave me only at times that they prompted me to read it, so they could record it and make it look like they could control prophecy as it was popped up. And then they made it appear at the age of 17 that I was a prophet because of all this videos they showed the military that accurately predicted other stuff besides Monson, Hinckley, Bednar, which hadn't happened yet. And so they made it appear that way, but the military knew that I really didn't know that information, and the Mormons were giving it to me. And so it's like the murderers. It's like you only see part of the tape, you only got part of the story. And then they started interrogating me, asking me, how did I know that this was going to be happening on this particular date? How did I know the statute?
They were programming you with information that they already had planned in their plan.
Mm-hmm.
And then you would record that in your mind. Then they would drug you so you would forget. Then they would drug you again and you would regurgitate that. And they would videotape it and try to make you look like you were prophetic so they could take this and give it to the government.
And then use it against me as a mental illness or something. If bits and pieces of it came up, and if I'm starting to explain as an adult that I actually did give them the day Osama bin Laden died a year before it happened. And that's
so
what happened.
What is all of these Mormon men that you were dealing with? What is their intention in doing that? What are they getting out of this? Why are they doing it?
At the age of 17, it was explained to me, actually at the age of 19, in 1987, what was given to me as a concept and I understood was what they had done to me and evaluated about how it worked, they were going to do to all the people that were coming up with memories in the 90s for the satanic memos. And Glenn Pace was going to be pulling up their memories in his own office with his own audio and video stuff, gas and helpers, and was going to massage the memories and leave some people around with memories. And the ones with solid memories, like mine, I wouldn't walk out of that office. I'd be dead. I'd had a heart attack, and that's the way it would have been. They would have made sure that the coroner and the doctor that did the autopsy get the right results.
You're saying if you would have went to Glenn Pace's office, that would have happened to you?
Oh, absolutely. If he just started pulling up my memories and seeing how strong they were and how many they were, and he already knew that. That's why I didn't go to Glenn Pace's office, and I wasn't a Mormon in the 90s.
So the whole Glenn Pace papers, those reports, that was planned, that was controlled disclosure. They wanted that to be let out?
It had to be let out because in 1987, on July 19th, 1987, the exact date the satanic memos were released or leaked 3 years later, it was announced by King Kesey. That's his backwards birthday, 917719. That he announced that he was in the future and reading the satanic memos because they told him to announce it. Now, I don't know who gave him that data, but by him announcing that in a paranormal fashion, like he announced the upcoming earthquake at the World Series, that wasn't going to happen until it did. By announcing that, it made it happen. In other words, they allowed it to happen. They pushed it. They made it happen. They massaged it, and they did it. And they did it with MK Ultra data that they had learned off kids like me and adults along the way. And they had a.
Are they doing it? Why do they want that information to come out? Why do they control disclosure and then retract it like that? Is it to see how much people will believe and how dumbed down the typical population is, and that they can let out the truth that these abuses and sexual rituals are actually happening, and then retract it and go, okay, let's see how much control we have? Are they just that sociopathic that they're just playing with their own, shit that they're involved in?
There's a lot of value in everything you just said. There's something that's good that can come out of all this bad for them, and the end result for them, and the end result is not just how can we control secrets and stuff. How do we get people to become Mormon and stay Mormon? How do we get them to pay a full tithe and walk away with a smile on their face and not complain about it? How in the temple, do that behavior modification, throw some threats on them, throw some gas on them, let them walk away. They remember the threats kind of sort of. They don't remember how the threats got there. God must have threatened them in the temple. They need to pay a tithe right now. If they were going to divorce their wife, they just suddenly fell back in love with their wife, but they're not really in love with their wife. They just know if they divorce their wife, they're going to die, and they will.
let's talk about that, because I want I have some questions about your personal marriages and their planning with that. And also, I know I was actually in an arranged marriage unknowingly, and
Oh, mine.
it's kind of
Mine.
crazy because they um my ex-husband, after we got married, he didn't even tell me any of this before we got married, just nonchalantly. And he was never in love with me. It was clear he was a sodomite. Like, he wasn't sexual. He wasn't interested in me. It was very mechanical. It took me a long time to realize that, because I, didn't know what a real relationship was, having grown up Mormon. But and you probably don't know anything about that either, having been in arranged marriages yourself. But he had what?
I've had a lot of girlfriends, and so I know what a relationship could be.
Okay.
But I play
Okay.
my part, and I also know that I can make a lot of good happen in a relationship that I don't want to be in. And a lot of that's on me.
So he shows me his patriarchal blessing after we got married, and just kind of nonchalantly slips it over, and he's like, "Oh yeah, look at that last paragraph." And looking back, I can see now all of the scripted, planning of our coming together. And did you ever get a patriarchal blessing?
No, not that
Okay.
I know of.
Are you familiar with?
Yeah.
Okay. So in the last paragraph of the first page, it says something to the effect of how he was going to he had a friend, and he was going to meet this friend. And through this friend, he would gain an acquaintance with a young woman who he would be fair. And, there's just this ridiculous wording of how they put it. And that through that, he would, gain partnership and children. And it was clear because he was my brother's friend growing up. And so it was pointing to that he would meet a friend and marry their sister, which is what I was. And it just hit me a few years ago, probably really only in the past year, it hit me. And the veil came off, and I realized that was totally planned. I actually think that it wasn't in his original patriarchal blessing, and that he went back when they decided, because I had people in my family's cult very much so planting suggestive ideas into me of who I was going to marry, and that I should start seeing him or whatever.
I love that. It's the only way you can look dates up, is by it's a lot easier that way. When the husbands are all dying on the wife's birthdays, that's the way you do it. You get her to you find out who's got the backwards birthday. Is she attractive to him? Can we make it happen? We predicted it in 1985. Now we got to make it happen. Yeah.
Why is the husband dying on the wife's birthday? In the older age, in the older generations of Mormonism, you're saying the husband's dying on the wife's birthday?
Yes, on the older, especially when you go back in the historical record and you find out a high-ranking male or woman is in two marriages. Go to that first marriage, which ended either in murder or ended in premature death or ended in natural death, one of those three. You'll find that the second wife somehow is numerically connected to that one, or the second husband, and it's almost like a form of confession. And I'm pretty sure that that's a Mormon Masonic form of confession, to leave that evidence behind in those second marriages like that. And there's a lot of 711. There's the number 711, the numerical sequence 117 or 711 in there on a lot of those. I'm talking from the 1960s to the 2000s. And I'm only dealing with the top 300 people. I've only done this numerical analysis on the top 300 Mormons that were born or that died in my lifetime since 1968. And then the movie stars that I saw, and the band members that I saw predicted to die also. And their political leaders.
Yeah. So
Anyway, all
why?
this, and I got to make this point really quick, if you don't mind. All this is based on Jesus. Mormon Jesus was said to have been born April 6th, and that was said to have been the day he died. So they're saying that
He was born and died on the same day.
Jesus was born. Mormon Jesus is known to have been born and died on the same day, and that same day, which is the Passover Eve, comes up over and over and over again in Mormon dates and the historical stuff. But it doesn't tell you that it's Passover Eve. It doesn't tell you that it's Passover Eve. It doesn't tell you that the visit from the angel Moroni was Rosh Hashanah, or it doesn't tell you that. It just pops up over and over. So Joseph Smith knew the Jewish dates.
Yeah, obviously, huh? And well, and the Mormon Jesus, just for people like myself who are still believers, I know you aren't, but not in Mormonism, but in Jesus. Um, but the Mormon Jesus is Lucifer. And that's clear in the Mormon temple. In the movie, you actually enter into a covenant with Lucifer in the Mormon temple movie. And that's when Lucifer turns around, and do you remember the movie?
Yeah, and he tells you that, do you have money before money's ever created, or a concept of money? And he tells you that you need to put clothes on, which basically is you're following Lucifer's command by wearing the Mormon garb. Yeah, I know.
Yeah, the coins and tokens, and then he turns around and looks right at the audience in the eyes and he says, if these people in this temple this day don't live up to these covenants, then they are under my power. Meaning that Mormonism is a covenant contract of perfectionism under the laws and covenants of Mormonism, not the Bible, not Jesus Christ. It's antichrist because it removes mercy and grace. And then the compass and the square on the Mormon garment actually signify exactness, right? And exactness completely delineates and cancels out mercy and grace, which is what the atonement was for. So Mormonism is a Luciferian antichrist religion, and it's clear if you understand what is happening contractually in the temple movie.
And I just try to make it into a psychological understanding. It's like when you enter into a contract and then you're told that your contract's the most important thing that you have over and over and reinforced that way, it makes it stick.
Yeah.
And
Well, and which
like
I
it's like the Mormons being a part of the hidden CIA, which is not the CIA. It makes that contract stick in their head to keep it secret because they think they're patriotic, they're loyal, they're American, they're one of us, when they're doing just the opposite of what everything that we stand for.
well, yeah, they're just ratting out people who don't want to live in exactness and actually want to practice any level of free will in their life, or to leave the church and not be controlled. But so that's I have a question about that with you, because in your Eric Smith interview and with me, you've talked about how you're happy with your contract, you're compensated for it, you think it was kind of a cool program that they did, even though you went through a lot of trauma. So
Oh,
I'm
pure.
curious how, as as a human being, how you um, deal with all of that. And I know you're compensated financially and that they take care of you, but having 100% PTSD, and like you're just really okay with the fact they made you witness murders, witness sexual abuse, participate in murders, all that stuff. You're just made peace with that.
I've made peace at what the role the U.S. government and other governments that were in my life, their role. I've made peace with that. I have not made peace with the Mormon role in this. That's why I'm so loud. That's why I have the tone that I set. That's why we're talking today on 322 Skull and Bones Day. I don't know if the shooting happened or not. I hope. Well, that's some bad words to say, but I expect it to happen. A bunch of them. And I'm not.
Shootings,
And I'm not
expect.
doing much to stop it. I've done my piece. I've told cops. I've put it on the internet, and I just kind of stay vague about it and wait for it to happen because Bednar predicted it, not me. So,
How long ago?
in the temple of 2005, also at the 1987 event, when Bednar predicted that my classroom would get shot up. Unfortunately, or fortunately, I wasn't in that classroom when Roseburg got shot up. And that kid that did that was Bruce McConkie, had his birthday and death date on his birthday. And then he killed himself. 13 people got killed. So, I mean, Bednar called that one in 1987. And that kid wasn't even born yet. So this is a shooting in Roseburg at my college. So how do you know I'm going to be in college in Roseburg? They knew.
You were programmed
They
to
had
do all of
left the military in 1985. They had a real good outline of where I was going to be, in what state, what education I was going to get, and they could fine tune it along the way. I had no problem with that.
And that was predicted for Skull and Bones Day 2023 that Bednar predicted a shooting.
Something big was supposed to happen on Skull and Bones Day 2023, because 2023 is a Skull and Bones year backwards, and we don't get those too often. And then you get the biblical Skull and Bones, which is today. Then you also had March 22nd, 2023. So this is the second Skull and Bones in 2023. There'll also be the biblical Skull and Bones. Or no, the Mormon Skull and Bones will be Kislev 22. So that'd be what, September something, and then you'll have the backwards one versions of those two, the 223, but they're not nearly as much of a value.
So these are all different dates based on the Julian calendar, the Hebrew calendar, and what's the third one?
The Gregorian, the one we live under.
Gregorian. Okay.
But and on the Hebrew calendar, this is where Nelson did it. So Joseph Smith and his people, or Brigham Young, or whenever all this started, and when you get into the data, you'll see that this was happening. When I showed all my stuff on Facebook, you just pull up a couple of examples of it and go, oh my God, that prophet, that day night, they all died on their backwards birthdays, or their wife's backward birthday, and all that kind of stuff. So Mormon Hebrew begins the number. So when I say January, you think of a 1. When I say Tishri, a Jewish person thinks of a 7 because it's the 7th month. Well, Mormons call Tishri the 1st month. Nelson, he redesigned the number program to get a 4th parameter on the data set. And so when you think of like numbers, you think, okay, David, 121. How many 121s are there in 365 days? Well, there's January 21st. It's the same forwards and backwards, so I don't get that backwards on mine. Okay, so that one. You got October 21st. Ooh, that's a big one. And you got December 1st. So you got 3 dates out of 365. So I'm going to say 1%. Basically, all things that you're seeing are 1% chances occurring over and over and over in every family member. Now you start understanding what I'm talking about. Maybe.
Wait, what's the chances of occurring over and over again in a family?
So when you die on your birthday, it's basically 1%, and there's a 1% of the calendar. So on my birthdays, my birthday, I have a 121, I have a 18 Julian, and I'm a 420 Mormon Biblical Hebrew, and I'm a 1020. No, I'm a Mormon Biblical Hebrew. So I have 4 birthdays. Those 4 dates, and you go forward and backward. January 21st can't go backwards. January 8th can't go backwards. So August 1st, Jerry Garcia's birthday too. That's mine. That's my backwards Julian birthday. 420, that can also be 4-2, and that can be 2-4. So there's 2 more. Anyways, I got 8 dates. I've got a 2% chance of any day being one of my birthdays when you distill them down like that. Then you spread it over 3 calendars and 4 ciphers. You get about a 10% chance. There's about a 10% chance that a 2% person with numbers, and Bednar and Nelson have much higher numbers than I do because they have 6s and 9s. The 6s become 9s and the 9s become 6s. And so when they list it all out. So, and I did
They
some
have
of
6s and 9s in what?
Their birthday. So Nelson is born 9/9, September 9th, the most common day to be born in this country by data, scientific data. It's a product of a baby being made on Joseph Smith's birthday or Christmas Eve or Christmas Day and being born. Well, if you're going to be born on 9/9, you probably want to make it a little after that, unless you're really trying to be super, super special. Then how are you going to keep the baby in there long enough to make sure it's born? Like me being conceived on April 30th and born on the 4th month, 22nd day, Hitler's death day, being conceived on Hitler's death day and being born on Hitler's death day, according to the Mormon biblical Hebrew conversion. So when I say January, you think of a 1. When I say Tishri, a Jewish person should think of a 7. A Mormon Danite would think of a 7 and a 1. So they cut the year in half. And so each month has its opposite season. You see the opposites there? Now you're starting to see it makes sense. It makes sense. So winter is summer. Summer is winter. January is now July. July is January. So that's why there's 2 Hebrew things.
So they've completely reversed all of it. But then my question is, what is their fascination with this, and how does it benefit them to have these numbers lining up?
I think it's all they got.
Where does it come from? Is it because it's part of the bloodline Mormon cult, the higher up, the echelons, those that are from these early Mormon bloodlines that my family stems from, that go all the way back to the pioneers, that then goes back to the UK, to the witches' covens, to the Freemasons, that, where does this obsession with these numbers come from? Do you know where it originates?
In the Old Testament, the book of Numbers, God commanded the Levites, and the Mormon leaders were all Levites, according to their own predictions and their own prophetic saying, they have to be Levites. They predicted, they told the Levites to count everything, including a census, and the census would include the babies of the Levites but not to include the babies of the other tribes. Ooh, there's a lot there. A lot you can read into that really quick. In other words, all these babies the Mormon leaders made, they had to keep track of, even though it's not public. And the babies that they created through whatever means they did of other people, they didn't have to keep track of. And their insistence on doing it with their own sperm and getting some of these women pregnant, especially way back in the 70s and 80s, and getting those girls, and those kids were the ones that were spun the hardest. Those were the ones that were shown psychological programming, not expected to recover. But they had the prophet's blood. They had the prophet's DNA. They should be able to handle anything that was thrown at them. And those usually died at a really young age. And the parents never found out that that wasn't their kid, or that the mommy was the kid, or that the baby was switched, and they did it all different ways because they were looking for which kid could take as much programming as possible and come out the best. And a lot more of that is on what the programming is, what the social situation of the kid was before he got to the point, after the point, the drugs that were used, the intelligence and the capacity of the child. All kinds of those things were taken into account in this very dark psychology program.
So have you seen their breeding rituals and their breeding in the stuff that you were involved in? Do you have any memories of like the sexual rituals that you were involved in with them doing breeding for
I saw,
birthdays?
I saw my wife get uh, raped in the temple, but my first wife I saw get implanted. I don't know the date. I don't know the date we aborted that baby. But I opened the door. We're in San Diego, Gold Coast Apartments. I've made a public statement about it on Facebook somewhere. It's all scattered everywhere. Open the door. Mormon missionary. Hi, we're in the Book of Mormon. Next thing I know, I'm being forced into the house. 4 or 5 people come in. Bednar's one of them. I got handcuffs on. I got a gas mask thrown behind me. I'm getting ready to fall. I fall right onto my own bed. I'm looking over. I got handcuffs on. My wife is on the floor. There's a micro pipette. It's got sperm in it. David Bednar, inseminator. He's cursing at me, telling me all these kinds of things. Anyways, next day I wake up, don't know anything. Week or two later, my wife tells me she's pregnant. We weren't planning on getting pregnant. That we were trying not to get pregnant. We used birth control, condoms, that kind of thing. She was a Catholic, not a practicing Catholic, but we weren't planning on getting pregnant, and it wasn't an accident, but it appeared to be an accident because we didn't know how that happened. So I pitched the idea of a divorce. I mean, abortion. She didn't want an abortion. So my handler comes along. Somehow they know all these conversations. They know my wife's pregnant. Did they hack her medical records? Did they listen to it? I don't know. He tells me my wife's pregnant, and he reminds me and stimulates me to that point of where she was pulled that memory up really quick while we're talking at the door. I remember I worked for the government, blah, blah, blah. No problem. I'll pay for that abortion. And that wife did get an abortion, and it was a filmed abortion. It was a major memory. I could talk about it for 20, 30
What do
minutes.
what do you mean by he stimulates you? How does he do that?
Key words. So if you've seen the movie The Manchurian Candidate, like I talked about with Eric Smith, you have a program soldier. He's talking to a specific authority figure, Frank Sinatra, and he throws 52 red queens up. That's a picture that nobody's ever seen. You don't see 52 red queens collected from 52 decks of cards, and that might have been beat into his head for 5 hours 20 years before, that when you see 52 red queens, you're supposed to remember this, which causes you to remember this. And you can see his eyes. He did a really good acting job. 52 red queens, his eyes go up and right really quick. It tried not to show emotion because he's been trained to show that emotion. It's, oh, I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
This
Okay.
is what Bednar? This was Bednar that did
One of
this?
them. That's what all of our clues. So like if I wanted to wake you up for a particular memory that I knew that was repressed, I could talk about it. Your first wedding, your second wedding, your baptism, whatever it was. Start talking about that. Bring up the color of your dress. Take you back in your mind to that memory. If there's a chemical report, a repressed event, like when you were changing your clothes in the baptism font, or when you went under the water, I could take you right back to that point of the memory. If it was chemical repressed, it would pop up, and I could tell by looking at your eyes whether you got a memory or not got a memory, because
So,
that's what
so they would
are living.
stimulate you. They would stimulate your memories by holding up a deck of cards of queens.
That's an example. They stimulate memories by using specific words. So Naval Special Operations Command, not something INSOC. They start talking about INSOC having a birthday of April 16th, to match other predicted things, because Thomas Monson's going to die on Mormon Hebrew 4:16. And like, what the hell are you talking about? Who the hell's Thomas Monson? Mormon? And you go, oh yeah, Mormon, Navy. Yes, I'm in. So I know enough information to not pull that whole memory up. And you can't download years of memory in a flash in your brain while you're having a 10-minute conversation at the door. Enough of that memory comes up that, yeah, I know who you are. How can I help you? Oh wow, I've met you 20 times. You remembering too much, David. That kind of stuff.
And then he offered to have your wife have an abortion, and that was traumatic for you. And you
So
guys went through that together.
my handler came by and reminded me that that baby that my wife and I were arguing about wasn't a planned baby. I didn't put it there. It was put there by violence. And that in the paranormal government movie that I'm making, I aborted that baby, and I was already forgiven of my sin of killing a human. And I don't have a problem with being forgiven of sin, but they're telling me this, and it's like, oh yeah, I become religious in the future, don't I? Like, well, we think you do. You definitely. We saw this movie with you. You were a Mormon. Uh, you appeared to be religious, but we don't know. And then being drugged and drugged. No, no. Oh, I like this program. I like this program. God damn, these people in the CIA that do all this evil shit. Some of it makes sense. There's a lot worse evil they're trying to get rid of. I get this, and we're going to lose some people along the way because they won't all recover memories like I did. They won't make it to the finish line. I understood that. I hope their families are helped out.
So the military, this was the military doing this, or the church?
The military is the good version. The church is the very bad version. The church wants what the military has. I have loyalty to the U.S. military and to the U.S. government. Are there bad actors? Absolutely. It's like us. It's indicative of our population. Um, the church, there's nothing good there. They want everyone to be them. The U.S.
But
government
they
doesn't.
were, but they were both using you and handling you, the church and the military. Why? How did, if you had a contract with the government when you were a little kid, how come the church had access to you and was handling you?
The church was handling me. The government found out and flipped me. And it's not hard to flip somebody that was destined to be a Mormon and kill people. I don't want to be a Mormon and I don't want to kill people. So I flip to the good side. And then all of a sudden I've got good handlers and bad handlers. And the bad handlers want me to do all kinds of bad things. And the good handlers are telling me, well, do this instead. Do this instead. We flipped it. We changed it. And so they're all competing along with this dark.
Why do you consider the military's handling of your PTSD case good?
Because of what comes out of it. Because of what comes out of it. The collapse of the Mormon church, reparations for the damages they've done in the hundreds of billions of dollars are sitting there waiting to be divvied up. Uh, Very good
Wait,
moment.
so you're saying that the government plans to bring down the Mormon church, the
Yeah,
military?
yes. Yeah. We're getting more data. Who's watching this video? Why are they watching this video before it's been released publicly? What data, what tools are they using? What nation did they steal them from? And why are they listening to this? And there are people that have vested, as you can tell by the conversation. If I'm crazy, I'm a very special kind of crazy because I'm talking accurate stuff with accurate dates and bones and this kind of stuff. And I don't think you can make it up and you can keep track of it in a complicated story in a disabled mind and regurgitate it over and over again. I don't think it's possible.
And did they program your brain to be able to do that, or was that a natural gift you were born with?
Both. A natural gift is, I would just, the product of my intelligence that I'm blessed with having, a product of the education that they made sure that I got along the way, I have a BS in biology and chemistry. I was in psychiatric nursing. I did an AS in nursing, registered nursing, but it got changed at the last semester and turned to a general studies because the VA, while I was working for them in psychiatric nursing, found out my classified portion when my handler came in. He was an actual psychologist that worked with PTSD at the VA. And I did a last little session there and walked away and did their programming event and got fired for something they wanted me to be fired for, and didn't even remember it the next day as they called me and announced I was fired. So yeah, they're really good. That's the last day I ever worked.
So what is
And
why
Fort Hood,
does why does the U.S. military, what branch are you contracted under?
Navy, U.S. Navy.
So why does the U.S. Navy specifically want? Is it the U.S. Navy that wants to take down the Mormon Church?
No, the U.S. Navy is just a one to five parts of this branch of the U.S. government that was all attended this 3-day Navy SEER evasion and escape event that I was at, that I described in April 1985, where Bruce McConkie died. He died there. Now, on his death certificate says he died April 19th, and that's because he cursed the Oklahoma City to die, the bomb, exactly 10 years to that date after that. And it did happen. And also it's backwards a whole bunch of other things in the Battle of Lexington, and started off the Civil War, no, started off the Revolutionary War. Anyways, that 419 was chosen in there because it gives him a 7th month, 29th day Mormon Hebrew to match his 7th month, 29th day Gregorian birthday. He died at 7729. He really died 413, which was double Pi Day on the calendar, and that's the day it happened. And so when he died 413, he was an apostle for the Mormon Church. I had some big government leaders, high up law enforcement. They're like, he just died. Everybody knows him in my world. Are you really going to be able to make it that he died of cancer in Salt Lake 6 days from now and not one leak get out? Yes, sir. We guarantee it. And to this day, I can't even begin to even approach anyone and say Bruce McConkie died 6 days before he did. There's
So
no proof.
they publicized the date that they wanted it to look like to match the numbers that they were. Okay.
Yeah.
So,
But he got
and
hidden set of second numbers. He got 413 backwards pi, which just happened to be the 7th month, 22nd day on the Mormon Hebrew cipher. Backwards 22 divided by 7 is 3.14. Einstein was born 3.14 pi day. It all goes back to really smart people having pi and blah, blah, blah. And they needed that pi. And then there was some movie scripts that had already been pre-written or selected or began or conceptualized. 23, the movie 23 was known to be a movie in 1985 before that person that wrote the script ever got the script, or however that happened. The Men in Black series and the Back to Future series, those were predicted in a paranormal way. And when I was told to say, I'm seeing Back to the Future 3 and the train is 131, like the SEAL training class, Buds 131 is Halloween code for 1976, 131. Yeah, I see it. And when they came by to my house and said, I want you to go see Back to the Future 3, I'm like, I don't have any money. And next thing I know, I'm going to see the movie because
so,
I predicted it would happen.
right. So why did, back to the question, why does the military and you're part of the program of the Navy, and why do these 5 branches that were there, and then I want to go to the event, the 3-day event, but why do these 5 groups want to take down the Mormon Church?
I don't know that it's one to take down, but they saw the bad that came from it. So we're making this paranormal movie that the Mormons actually believed was real, and that whoever was making the movie and putting the data in there was causing people to die in the future, causing a stock to go 100 times up, causing earthquakes, and they wanted control of that. And the people in the military knew damn good and well that we weren't causing someone to die, other than giving their name for the Mormons to go kill, or predicting an earthquake in Japan that, according to science, was going to happen every 7.2 years, blah, 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 because they had the science behind it. And the people that were smart in the government to work on that skill set. Tell me about earthquakes in Japan. I want to know everything about earthquakes in Japan in a 10-minute soundbite, and I want you to spend a year studying it to give me that 10-minute soundbite. That's what I'm talking about.
So the military is not participating in the parts of these programs that you were being handled by, where there was sexual ritual stuff and murders happening? That was only the church, that wasn't the military?
The military did let some of that stuff occur on their property with me. Now, whether they let that Mormons were directing. Now, sex. I made a child at the time of Bruce McConkie's death. There's this 2-minute window. Well, we made a child right before Bruce McConkie died. So, and
You made a child? What do you mean?
Made a child. There was a black woman. I had priapism. I was being held by the arms, and I was put onto this girl who was supposed to have a January 14th birthday, which is Julian New Year's birthday, which is the 411 backwards. And she was impregnated, and I've met her along the way, and she's military. She's not Mormon.
So
So
they used your seed to breed a child for their uses in the military.
a couple different times, but it's a complicated story, and it's all full of flashpoints. But a couple different times. But that one particular example is a fresh one on my mind. So, and I don't know if that child there's actually a child there. They could say there's a child there, and if that child is doing paranormal stuff for the government or paranormal stuff for the Mormons either know where that child is located and they have a hidden camera there to make sure that the child's not making up stuff that's not what they want there to be. So there's other people, there's 50 of us at least that are doing this paranormal stuff. It's like I keep saying Nilsson's going to die on a 129921 day, which is yesterday. There's a bunch of 129s on the calendar once you understand where they all are. Then you got the times of 129. But there's a reason for that. It's because the daughter died on that day, and a whole bunch of my dad died on that day. Anton LaVey died, a whole bunch of other 129s. But somebody else has control of the timeline, and what they say based on their memories is more accurate than mine. And they did that over and over again. So as we would, in 1985, I'm supposed to go to the year 2121. I'm definitely dead. I'm not going to live that long because they got a graphic that shows how many years I'll have been. I'm supposed to go to 100 years old. I'm not supposed to live that long. I go to the year 2046. Oh, I'm going to die that year. And then I got extended to 2049. So I'm doing all these readings. And so when I go past my death date, I have no way to be forced to verify it. So in 1985, it was predicted that I would be at a concert in 1987 and see Dr. Timothy Leary and King Kesey and a whole bunch of people and every Mormon leader there was. It was predicted. In 1986, they had to come along and remind me to leave Oklahoma and move to Eugene, Oregon so I could get to that concert. I had no problem doing that. In 1988, they had to remind me that I saw a concert in 1987 over 12 hours of a day, and there were minutes that I didn't remember and maybe hours. And they keep my memory like that, and then it all just filled in when over time.
So this movie, I want to ask you about this movie, but just real quick side note, so you never had kids of your own?
Oh, I have one daughter. Yes, my first wife was a Japanese woman, and we have a daughter.
Okay. And then besides any like ritual seed they were forcing, there may be others out there that you're unaware of within programs.
My daughter's 34 years old. She lives in Texas, and I have a grandson, and that is my family. And we were told to keep our family very small. It's because that when I disappear and when this closes down, I have full hope and faith that my family comes with me, and they don't have to walk around in public and let the story be out there about them like that. And we should be protected. We were promised that by the government. And to
You're
keep
supposed to be rescued out of like some.
I'm sorry, what?
They're supposed to put you into protection at some point?
Oh yeah, I'm in a form of protection right now. Electronically, there's probably a couple agents around me embedded deep. They could be here in a minute or two's time, armed to the teeth. It's kept me safe. It's another reason to keep the Mormons away. You don't want that bad news event. You just don't want that bad news event because it wasn't in the paranormal world. So why would it just pop up like that?
Okay, so the paranormal movie that you're talking about that was being made. Do you know who's overseeing this and what is that about? Can you expound on what you mean when you say we're making a paranormal movie?
So all this is about trying to predict things that are going to happen. Ken Kesey was tasked with predicting a series of stuff at an outdoor concert while being Mormon. First of all, Ken Kesey wasn't a Mormon. So something happened, and in 1985, it was predicted that King Kesey would be in a Mormon in this time set, and this time set at this concert in 1987. And the Mormons were like, this is a trick. This is a trick. Well, King Kesey
Who predicted this?
There's like 50 of us, and I don't remember who actually said what. I just had to get to Eugene, Oregon, and it just so happens I'm the only one talking about it. So,
but aren't these predictions among the 50 of you planned by somebody?
Absolutely, because we only predict them. earpiece. We have an earpiece and a headphone, and we're watching a video that has script on it, like the old teleprompters. Before a teleprompter, we have a video that's up there telling us what to say. That's the only reason. I didn't just make up something. I'm going to go to Eugene, Oregon and see a Grateful Dead concert. I didn't even know what the Grateful Dead was. I didn't know what Eugene, Oregon was.
Where
So
are you seeing this screen?
in the room that I in 1985. So there's a projection on the wall. That several projections. There might be a movie going on over here, and there might be. I'm told to look at this screen, upper right hand corner on the wall, and it's telling me the words that I'm supposed to be saying about predicting a concert in Eugene, Oregon. And the video over here might have a video showing a airplane view of Eugene, Oregon, and there might be a view of this that's talking about all the different things that are available in Eugene, Oregon, and what it's all about, the population, the climate, that kind of stuff.
So this is a lifelong movie
Mm-hmm.
that you're being made to look like a prophet, and who's
Because
over?
the bone, when I'm doing all this, anytime a prediction is made in that form, that's an official remote view according to the Mormons. I actually had Joseph Smith's bone, or another prophet's bone, in my hand, a little white piece of bone. And there's some fresh bones too, and those are freaky because they got the blood and the flesh and everything on them, and that's just not it. I don't feel comfortable with all that. But they put a white handkerchief down, and the same handkerchief that they do the whatever the Hosanna shout or whatever. You take that one, you fold it a particular way, then you slice the finger off and you put it on there. But
So what is the remote viewing? How is that done? Like what form? Because I mean, are you doing remote viewing by camera, or because a lot of times within these cults they talk about remote viewing as astral projection. How are you remote viewing? What method are you using?
all the remote viewing I'm done, I'm not here to validate anything other than it's all bullshit. So when I was a kid, it was viewfinders, so little toys that you take a plastic round circle that has pictures in it, and you slide it in this plastic thing, and you click, and it goes to the picture, and those pictures were put there by Mormons or whoever, and they would come by and show me my next house I was going to live at. My earpiece would give me the address, or I take the viewfinder and move it down and see the address on the wall from a movie or a piece of paper that somebody had. And that was how they were done. Nowadays, it's done with virtual reality. The last event that I had outside of VA property at my safe house was done with virtual reality and Google Glass. That's some cool stuff. And let me tell you, you can damage a human's mind in 5 minutes just like that with the right set of data and the right drugs in virtual reality.
What's Google Glass?
Google Glass is a pair of glasses like this. It has technology longer made that projects an image as you walk around. It makes you can see pictures and stuff as you're walking around. They used it. It wasn't a hot seller.
Well, I know that's a thing because my siblings, when I went back to gather my stuff after I took off, they had, but they were recording glasses. They were used to record everything that my
Yeah.
with them. But you're talking these another Google glasses, not the recording kind, but they actually project something else besides what's in front of you.
They project not for anyone else to see. Project that you with your special glasses through, make it appear that you're seeing text in front of you in thin air.
And so you were remote viewing events that
I'm
were being
remote viewing stuff
like
to
through
see.
your glasses.
Yes, I'm remote viewing stuff that I was told to see in my Google Glass. I'm remote viewing that I'm divorcing my wife. So July 6, 2012, when I was given my last remote view by Richard Marcinko, that was where I had the highest technology that I've seen in a long time. When I was told to divorce my wife, go to LA, go to a particular hotel in LA, file for Aliyah, and follow instructions. And I did.
So
And
what are you seeing in these glasses? Like, what is the event that's playing out in your glasses that you're seeing?
I'm seeing pictures of my past that I knew was my past, and that the people that I'm talking to put there to make me get specific memories, to make me real comfortable with what I'm doing really quick, because they want to do it as quickly as they can, the programming event, so they can use as less drugs as possible. So I got the best chance to recover it with the least amount of stimulation.
So so you're seeing when they're telling you you're going to divorce your wife, you're seeing a video of when they were originally planning and telling you that that's what you're going to do. That's what you're remote viewing.
Yes, they're showing. So you're asking me an exact sequence of what I was seeing at an exact time when I was seeing it. I don't have the whole 5-minute video in my head. I have the video in my head. That's Google Glass. There's a projection up there. Oh, that's that VA hospital address. Oh, that's okay. Yeah. because they wanted me to do specific things at specific times, or make sure I got to these points of reference. When I got to this VA hospital in Grants Pass, Oregon, it would be the very last VA experience I ever had, and I would know why. Then they showed me my last VA experience where I was drugged and programmed to kill my wife, cut her head off, and shoot up the VA, and walked away pissed, not knowing what had happened, pissed, not knowing what had happened. Was told to buy a certain gun in a certain way with a certain paycheck that came from the VA, and I was going to use their money to do it. And I started. And it wasn't until that custom trigger that was re-put back into my head on July 6, 2012 was shown back to me that, yeah, no problem. I won't shoot you up this time. And so we did it. And I went to that VA and I took care of that. And I made the letters that I wrote. I told you about a 4-page document. I'll have to forward that to you so you can get a good look at it. It's still in my data if you got to mine it out, all the other crap, though. There's a lot of busy, extraneous fluff in my data.
So you're saying that they had you kill your wife?
I was programmed to kill my wife. It tortured me to the point of where I slept in a separate bedroom 3 years straight. Because I didn't know what it was. I didn't know what it was, but the VA knew what it was, and they had good confidence that based on their assessment of me and of my total programming, that I wouldn't end up killing my wife and cutting her head off, and all that kind of stuff.
So it was like a test, like program that they wanted to traumatize you with thinking you had to, but they actually didn't want you to in the long run and knew you wouldn't.
It's much more complicated than that. It's compartmentalized. The people that knew about it didn't know everything about it. So there's only very few people that knew the whole outline of the program. The people at the VA that were allowed to keep whatever memories of whatever they had were, I guess, confident enough to not stop it, or they were not allowed to have memories that they saw what was programming along the way. I don't know. Your question is really complicated. Sorry.
So there's different levels of people handling you and the planning. There's the people at the highest that are planning your everything, and then there's the people that are distributing that information to you, the handlers of the handlers of the handlers. And so where does it come in? Because you were a test case for the military, but then the Mormon church is involved. So are you being used by these two separate programs for different purposes? Are the Mormons using you for one thing, ritual stuff and breeding and taking you to do different things within the Mormon church, and then the military, or were they partners in that?
That's a really complicated question. You danced around a bunch of stuff. So, like I tried to explain, the Mormons were doing stuff to me as a kid. By the time I was 17 years old, the government had caught them doing stuff to me as a kid, and they were going to correct it and help fix it for me. I needed to follow their plan, and I have been following their plan. And I believe that it's a much bigger thing than me. And I've been a part of something that's much bigger than me. And the goal and the design, I can absolutely guarantee, is to cause it to stop. And the plan is that the Mormon church does get shut down. They do get raided. I don't know if it's tomorrow, next year. It won't go on forever. You can't do that kind of stuff to people. You can't take all your old leaders and cut their finger bones off if they have any bones left, because each bone is supposed to be 10 blessing curses or whatever it envisions, and then it reduces its power. So you got to get the second finger bone, then the third finger bone. So I don't know if there's any, like Bruce McConkie, I don't think he has any of his 206 bones. I think his whole entire casket is filled with VCR and 8mm tapes from when I was a kid. That's what I was told would be there. So
do you know what the movie is that they're making?
like a name? No, I don't know a name, and it's not going to be a
Not a name.
movie.
I mean, do you know what they're planning to do with it? What it's for? It extends through your whole life, right?
They've been using it all along the way to do different variety of projects. And so, like when King Kesey predicted an earthquake and he paused, and he came back later and said World Series in his own voice, because he was still alive when the World Series happened 3 years later in San Francisco in 1990. He made that paranormal green screen earthquake prediction. 3 years later, it filled in with his audio, and the green screen behind him had the actual earthquake happening, appearing as it happened in 1987. They showed that to a true believing Islamicist named Al Kuwaiti, convinced him with some other videos that they had along the way that I was part of a paranormal presentation, and that I was based on Mormon theology and the miracles were happening in my life, and he needed to meet me. And then when he met me, he left with a plan, 10 plan, to cause a revolution. And all he had to do was talk one innocent guy into burning himself to death in Tunisia. And the marketing people would catch up, and he got to get to Libya. So he did the Arab Spring. But they didn't give Osama bin Laden's right-hand man, al-Kuwaiti, credit for that. It just was a natural uprising that happened. And it's better to get the population sign on for that, because then it's not just Osama bin Laden's people that sign up for it. Everybody that agrees with it will sign up with it.
So if you were had stuff done to you when you were a child by the Mormons, and then the military came in and were found out about it and we're going to correct it, then how come in your adult years then you were forced to marry, or programmed to marry, a Mormon and be a part of the Mormon church? Who was overseeing that? And if they were getting you out from that or helping you from what they'd done to you as a child, like, how does that make sense?
Okay, that's another really difficult one. If when you play it back, you'll understand it. I'm trying to pick it apart and trying to answer you correctly, because I'm thinking about my eye patterns, and this is evidence, because you're formulating unique questions. But one more time, you want to try it again one more time?
So I'll try to break it into parts. Let's see.
Please.
So
it's easier for me.
You grew up as a child having the Mormons doing stuff to you that was part of testing that they were doing on you to set you up for prophetic stuff that they were recording, right? And then the government,
with a program self-ending, with a program death.
the Mormons were the one that programmed your death.
With this vision that they've had of my life includes all the way from birth to death. So
okay, and then the military finds out about it and comes in and basically tries to undo or help you out in some way.
correct. And they also found value in it. There's great value in it. It led to the interrogation of al-Kuwaiti, but I don't think that the military had anything to do with the Arab Spring. After the fact, I'm sure they're going to be like, oh, wow. But
did the Mormons stop handling you after the military came in when you were 17 and you got put in the military?
No, this is the good part. At the age of 17, everything that had ever happened in my life was now on a list that the government was supposedly given. And they were supposed to meet the Mormons or make sure they had evidence of what the Mormons were doing. So in other words, all these different druggings, at that moment, I was promised that all the future ones had already occurred, because we were in the paranormal world. Wink, wink, nod, nod. We're going to watch them. And if it comes to the point of where they're going to program you to do something, and I agree with this. If they come along and program you to do something that you want to do, and they give you the right tools and resources and thoughts to get it done, it's going to happen. If they program you to do something you don't want to do, it's going to be hard, especially me. So I wasn't really worried about it. They're not going to come along and make me gay. It ain't going to happen. You're not going to come along and make me start killing people. That's not going to happen. You can come along and get me to quit my job, especially if you use the right words, the right thing, and promise me the next job. They were good at that. So
what the Mormons were doing to you, how did then the Mormons have access to do stuff like in the temple when they raped your wife in front of you and all of that? Was that part of what the military was doing with your contract?
No. So in 1987, in a public Grateful Dead concert, all day long, they kept coming up to me and telling me that I was a Mormon in the future. And I'm like,
who's they? The Mormons or
different actors. So it could be Mormon, it could have been CIA people, it was King Kesey was one, Dr. O'Leary, Frank Zappa. They wanted to meet the Mormon that wasn't a Mormon yet, who'd been baptized a Mormon in the future and became a Mormon and blah, blah, blah. Well, when I agreed that, oh yeah, I did become a Mormon in 1999, when they baptized me on 9/11 Mountain Meadows Day. They baptized me on September 11th, 1999, 2 years before, okay? The Jewish Rosh Hashanah. They baptized me on that day, and they chose that day. There's a reason for that, as you can figure out. All my marriages have those backwards dates and everything, the big ones. That's why they chose those dates. So, and I have those in my finger that's used in 2-3-46 to cause the next big earthquake or whatever it is, because this bone is what causes Coronado to get wiped off the face of the earth. That's what they think, and they're gambling with pretty good odds that a big enough earthquake will happen in LA or San Diego by that time or before that time, and they'll find a 2-3 in there somewhere, whether it's the date, the time, the latitude, the longitude, the height of the wave, whatever it is, water temperature in Celsius, whatever it is, they'll find it and they'll say, wow, get that bone and we'll get the next one. And they
So when
believe
was
it.
the last time you were interacting with like Bednar or Oaks or Monson, which I don't know if any of those are even still alive besides
Bednar,
Bednar and
Oaks,
yeah. When was the last time you had interactions or confrontations or anything with them?
Rose Bowl, January 1st, 2009. Or was 2000? No. Yep, January 1st. What's that? I did the Arab Spring 5 to 10. So it would have been January 1st, 2011. Wow.
So
So
2011, and what was your interactions with them then?
we made two films, three actually. One in the seats, that's the last one, and then the one underneath the tent, and then the one in the wide open. And Bednar described the graph of Bitcoin, and he
So
made that
these films were predictory type stuff.
very much, very much. Bednar predicted not only an electronic currency that came from an NSA paper, and NSA's got Mormons all wrapped around it. They got the salt. They've got the Eagle Mountain NSA Data Collection Center, which apparently has all the data of the world in it. So they know everyone's affairs. They can pull strings. They can call in favors. They can do all kinds of shit. But NSA wrote a paper on electronic money, which became Bitcoin, and they named it after some guy in Japan that we don't even know if he exists or not. So, anyways, Bednar drew the map of Bitcoin, which is basically there's two peaks, and so you got computers that are trading, and the people that have the money that put into the computers designed to follow those two peaks did that, and they made a lot of money. And not one word of Mormons in Bitcoin, and yet you have that all those overstock.com and all the big crypto stuff all right there in Utah and everything. Yeah.
So your contract with the military ended 10 years ago.
My
Why?
contract, no, my contract with the military started being compensated 11 years ago when I became disabled, and they gave me veterans benefits that I wasn't even allowed to apply for until Osama bin Laden was dead. So they came along ahead of the time and had me pre-apply 8 months before Osama bin Laden died, knowing they would shuffle the paperwork and make sure I was sitting there at that desk on the date they had planned to kill him, and that was playing at the news event because that would be part of my memories, and that was. And they did a really good job of that, and I really appreciated it. It took them like 2 years. I got really poor and sold houses and stuff. It didn't have to be that traumatic, but that was everyone else's experience too. And so I was living out a real experience.
So you don't have contact with your handlers anymore from the government, but how come the contact with like Bednar and the Mormons ended?
The contract was, I never had a contract with the Mormons. The
Not
Mormons stole.
contact. Sorry, contact.
Oh, contact. Well, the Mormons are scared to shit. If I see a Mormon pop up at my door, I film it first of all. If it's Bednar, I'm throwing the camera down and killing. And I've already told the FBI that. And the FBI had a real problem with me making a statement that if somebody came to my house, I would kill them. You don't understand. Bednar is the richest, most powerful man in the world to be. He's scheduled to be that way. And until we get the leak of the financial data, you won't even believe me. And then we had the leak.
So,
FBI never
but
came back.
why? What changed for you? So you saw them in, like you just said, 2011, and
Remember,
you did interact with
I
them. What
remember.
happened made you decide I'm not gonna?
I remembered. So my handler, Dr. Alan Kirkendall, the non-Mormon, came by my house right as I was divorcing my wife, reminded me to get rid of the Mormon garments because I was supposed to not be a Mormon, get rid of the Mormon garments, divorce the wife, and go to LA. The memory popped up, sell the house, divorce the wife. I still hadn't got the programming to get rid of the Mormon part yet. So all of a sudden I go, oh yeah, oh man, I've been a part of some satanic, whoa. So next thing I know, those calls are in the trash, and then I'm drugged, don't know why. And I slowly recover. Oh, I fucking hate Mormons. And and they wouldn't let me remember what I was supposed to remember to test me and test me and test me. All the while the camera's going on all my electronics, all my Apple Watches, when that came out later on, all that data is available to them. And so
But so the Mormons, didn't you say the Mormons programmed you when you were young to be Mormon, like down the road?
Yeah, I didn't want to be a Mormon, and you can't program me to do something I don't want to be. So the military came along and convinced me to become a Mormon and pretend like I was a Mormon, and that's what I did. Because in 1987, they showed my endowment. They showed my endowment from July 16, 2005. They didn't give the date, but they showed the ceremony that was fake of where I did see the real murder. And it's the same scene from other churches in the same secret type room with the same altar arrangement, the same circle. And then the person dies in a wooden chair. It's the same exact script of death. So they showed something that was from 1987 or before that at that concert and said it was from 2005. And then a variety of people came along and made sure I was actually at that 2005 event.
It was your initiative or your temple
I,
initiation that
I
that
became,
showed at the event.
you don't understand. So, and I'm not explaining it clearly. So in 1987, we're watching video from the future. One of those videos is my endowment from 2005. There isn't such a thing. You can't see video from the future. It's a reenactment of something that hasn't happened. It's a reenactment of something planned to happen. So they showed someone else's endowment or a modeling of that endowment that had a blood atonement associated with it. Because that's what mine. So they showed the video and said that was me. They even made sure it was a fat person in the Mormon garments because they had planned for me to be fat. They said I had so much trauma I was going to be fat. They reminded me to eat more along the way. Of sure, no, I had to get 25 pack years of Camel cigarette smoking. And from my point of view, it's like I've done a lot of work for this government, and they fuckers made me smoke 25 years and wouldn't let me remember that smoking was bad for my health and that I had a lot of reasons to stay alive and I was going to have some good contracts and stuff. And I didn't want to have lung cancer. No, they didn't let that happen. It was predicted I would have 25 years of cigarette smoking. Sierra Coop had to print it on the cigarettes all in 1985 before it ever happened. We had to get to late 80s before it was even warning on cigarettes. So those are little secrets that I knew about, like cigarette packaging is going to have harmful to your health. That didn't happen in 1985, but that was talked about has already happened at the 1985 event. The government knew they were going to do that. So here's the biggie. We knew the internet was coming out. The internet is the Navy's ship-to-ship communication system in 1985. They had already farmed it out to big tech, and it was getting ready to go worldwide. They were predicting Microsoft, which was going to be on every government computer, had Windows 3.1, blah, blah, blah. And it didn't even become a stock until Pi Day, because Bruce McConkie reverse day from Microsoft Pi. It came a 2,500X. They always talk, what's a 10 bagger? A 10 bagger is a stock that goes 10 times its value. Microsoft did 2,500 times, and they were paranormally predicting its stock and making it happen by just getting high stuff, whether it's through advertising or getting big people to do it. And the Mormons were doing all this. So in 1987, they predicted that the stock market would crash right after Robin Williams' dad was found dead. Robin Williams' dad was found 10/18, October 18th, and the stock market had its worst ever one-day crash, 23%. There's that 23% again on October 19th, 1987. That's the backwards 9/11 again. And then Robin Williams would hang himself on his dad's backwards death day, 8/11. So all that, and it's also Mindy's birthday from Mork and Mindy, Pam Dawford. Yeah. Oh, I know. I spent a lot of time on this, and these people were real in my life back along the way. And Robin Williams did a really beautiful classified contract. I certainly hope they didn't get into his head and cause him to hang himself in a specific way on a specific day. I hope he got one of those what I call classified retirements and just disappeared, reported dead, autopsy. Yeah, that fucker was fucked up. He's dead and he's buried, cremated, and all that. I hope he's watching on video somewhere and is not too sick.
Is it possible, just based on everything you're telling me about how you were used in your childhood, how you were used in your adulthood by the military, the PTSD, all the different interactions, and I know you're saying that the military is like doing it for good, what they were doing with you, and the Mormons were doing, bad stuff. But my question is it possible that with your programming and the way that you were used, that they've lied to you and that they're both using you and they're working together?
No, it's the classified stuff that I don't talk, that I just really don't want to talk about. If I absolutely have to, I probably typed that little thing here and there along the way, or I probably said it to a friend in a conversation somewhere along the way, that whoever has control of all the data knows that I have a real good memory of all that. Um, the people that I met along the way, and they want so bad to get this evil out of our government, out of our accountants, out of corporate America. The Mormons specifically started changing their college classes at BYU just to get more accountants, more sci-fi majors, more of this, and selecting the people that had the right backgrounds to get into there so they could put people in the higher levels of government and have control, and put people on those corporate boards so that they would know which stock to short and which stock to buy extra for right before the third quarter announces and get an extra 10% bump. They have tax preferred, they're tax exempt, so they don't have to follow capital gains. Everybody else that buys stock has to hold that stock for 18 months before they sell it. If they sell it before 18 months, that's a 20% penalty. That's a tax. Not the Mormons. They're tax exempt. They got money. They can cause that slope to go up, cause that slope to go down. And I'm not just being paranoid. This is talked about on cameras and stuff that we will get to see that or get released in the investigation. There's stuff that won't get released in the investigation that I'm trying not to talk about, but there is stuff that will get released that I saw get put there to get released. So the United States government couldn't prove that the Mormons killed each other forwards and backwards, but they recognized the patterns. They saw the patterns there in 1985 when you start talking about Brigham Young, Porter Rockwell, and John D. Lee, and Nelson bragging about it. The only way that can happen is not a spiritual. People that are of intelligence that don't have the blinders on, the rose-colored glasses of religion can see that over and over and over and over again. But we had no proof. We're on the inside, and then we did have some people on the inside, and all of a sudden Mormons became really top of CIA. 10%, 15% of the employees, FBI, 10% of the FBI, off of a religion that's only 0.5% of the U.S. population. So they stacked, and they began that, and they changed it when Bruce McConkie died, and they become Mormonism 2.0. When Bednar pops up, that's Mormonism 3.0, and all the electronic filters should be in place that if David or somebody like was to type something within seconds, that would be deleted from the internet, and I'd have somebody knocking at my door to talk to me.
If Bednar typed something?
No, anybody types bad shit about Mormons coming up under what's called Mormonism 3.0, laws are in place to cut that account down, to stop that kind of stuff, because people type that kind of stuff and other crazy people read it and go shoot churches up. It's happened so much in the future that they made laws about it that you can't say stuff that you can't prove, and then they get to decide what proof is.
Mm-hmm. So the government has been, basically you're saying, been being slowly infiltrated by the Mormons to try to take over the government. But there are still these aspects and safe parts of programs within the government that are functioning for good, that are trying to keep them from completely overtaking and infiltrating the government. And those aspects and parts of the government are trying to expose and take down the Mormon church with disinformation. Do you think that's why they had you be Mormon, or were they trying to get you to almost like to go in as a spy into Mormonism to see what they would do to you so that they could use that?
Absolutely. And I was done it right in front of Nelson. Nelson is the one that was assigning spies to go into the other religions and report back on their dark and light practices, because in his words, he got much more utility, much more value off of the dark side of religion than he did the light. And it's true. And here I am talking about Mormonism's dark point when he put me into Mormonism, put a gun to my head and made me marry the Mormon, made me get the Mormon marriage. He caused all this, and he knows
Nelson
that.
did that too.
Nelson, Bednar, all that. Nelson's he's older now. Bednar was younger then, but Nelson is the architect. Nelson designed this. This is Nelson's plan.
Well, I definitely know. I mean, you can look at him and tell he's a wicked man just by the look on his face. He's just vile.
You can't do this kind of work and not have a face like Bednar and Nelson have. I mean, you see that in my face like that. And when I go, I don't smile too much. I'm talking about a subject which is not, but by talking about it, I see good coming out of it. And so there is a little bit of a smirk or something there. Bednar and you can see it. They've killed a lot more people.
Well, I know a lot of people like Bednar and Uchtdorf. Do you know Uchtdorf?
Yeah.
They were kind of the later ones who were kind of brought out of nowhere. Like we hadn't heard much about them. And then they showed up on the scene in the top 12. And everybody's kind of big fans of theirs because they come across so much more, they're younger and more like they just have this persona of righteousness that even doesn't come across older guys. And so Bednar, I mean, you've seen a wicked side of him, but for me, he reminds me of, people in my family who I feel like I've met Lucifer himself because he's really great at putting off this like soft and gentle and caring tone, and the way that they speak. But behind it, you just know there's something off, And so Bednar and Nelson, with everything that you've seen, I mean, what are you willing to share with us, the crimes and sins against humanity that you've witnessed in like Oaks, Bednar, Monson, all of these guys? Like what kind of stuff are they involved in behind the scenes?
In a soundbite, I have seen 75 humans killed, most of them chopped up over the course of my life. The last one being at the Medford Temple during my own endowment on July 16, 2005, which they connected in a paranormal way to a backwards death curse of JFK Jr., who died on that day too, which is my dad's birthday, July 16th, which is the Trinity test of the nuclear explosion. So they have predicted 10 nuclear explosions that haven't happened, including the order of the cities and what they happened. That hasn't happened yet, and it doesn't have to happen. They think
But
it
by
will.
the hands of these men you've seen murdered, and like brutal, bloody murder by the hands of these men, not just being present, but by their own hands.
74 boys by their own hands, one girl. The girl was by Thomas S. Monson in 1973 in Chewy, Oklahoma, outside my house on the west side. And she
And
was beheaded.
that's in the temple?
That's what?
That's in the temple?
That's at my house. I've only seen one murder in a temple. That was when I was endowed. I didn't become a Mormon until 1999, and I didn't marry a Mormon and become more Mormonish until 2004. So
the 75 children were murdered at your house?
Some adults. There's 75 people that include children, boys, girls, and adults. So that's a general statement, and we got to go back at each one of them and pulls up an image in my head. I can talk about it. But at a variety of places. The temple is one, my house, my backyard, my friend that was older that was molesting me that I didn't know that was a Mormon across the street that I talked about. He had a billiards room in his back room, a detached building that had a pool table, a love seat, draft beer that was refrigerated in a kegerator, a bathroom, and a hidden closet with a stirrup chair. I saw several people die there. I was taken to a house that was referred to as Nixon's house. I don't know where it was, and it certainly wasn't Nixon's house. I saw a bunch of murders there. In Coronado, California, at the military event, I did see Bruce McConkie it's either suicide or murder, whatever you want to call it. Someone did give him the needle that he did take. Him die, and there was about 20 young men that died, all in that same real quick succession. So those were not military. Those were not military. They were kids. I saw them interrogated. I saw they were all from boys' homes and stuff. And I think they were mostly lost boys. And we haven't got to that memory yet. But so yes, I've seen 75.
FLDS, like lost boys from the FLDS church, or
yeah, that was the biggest source of the sacrifices that I knew of. No, they had no social security number. Nobody that was going to call them missing. They got dropped off in downtown Salt Lake. They were already programmed, and they would do what the prophet told them to do. And they're all chasing pussy. So they would do, and they were given that girls would come in, be drugged. They would do things that the FLSDS would probably do too, but you're still a virgin. Don't worry, blah, blah, blah. So, yeah. So they had ways of handling them.
What means you're still a virgin? If they do what would they do that would make them still a virgin, that they could still do sexually?
I lost my virginity so many times and didn't even know it. It's in that 4-page letter I'll let you read. But so I had been in 17 years old, I was taken to, I get frustrated when I have to repeat the same thing over and over again. And it's not you, it's me. So at 17 years old, I was pulled into a setting an interrogation protocol, enhanced interrogation protocol, being filmed, and I was asked to be truthful, and told to look into the camera. And was I a virgin? Yes, I am. And they asked me questions to confirm that. Then they started showing me video of all this sex stuff on that pool table and other places. As a kid, I had no knowledge of whatsoever. They took the video, they watched the video, they evaluated it, because we couldn't do it in real time back then. We didn't have that kind of stuff. But we got really close to real time back then. So they evaluated it. They said I was true. It was a response. But all of a sudden, now I'm not a virgin. So now,
Well, so was this the men that were doing it, or like they were making you have sexual experiences with other teenagers or girls or other little boys? Like, what were they doing? Who was it?
Francis Monson was on the pool table once. The mother of the kid was on the pool table once. So that was girl, woman stuff. He had
Is that Thomas S. Monson's son, Francis?
No, Thomas S. Monson's wife, an old lady. And I remember her saying, "That's such a tiny little penis." I was 8 years old. And she was just like trying to make a big deal out of it. And they were trying to get into my head psychologically too. I had an 8-year-old penis. And they're like, and a lot of this training that's done is naked. I told you, if the government told me to strip my clothes off on camera, they're making it paranormal, and I had to do it, I was going to do it. And so, but yeah,
okay.
I danced all around several different things because we're talking about stuff that I don't. This is off the cuff stuff, so it's good stuff.
Yeah. The lost. Well, it's important stuff that I think it's important.
A couple hours now. I would like to shut. That's okay, and do another one. Just cough.
Yeah. Let's just finish up this one little piece, and then I'll let you go, and we'll do another one. But just about that, the Lost Boys, like that whole scenario that they brought in, where you saw all of these deaths. My last question about that is, when you bring in that many, bodies, and they're chopping them up and doing all this kind of stuff, how do they cover that up? What do they do with all of that? And how do they transport that out of there? What did you ever witness that part of it?
Yes. So at the military event and at Nixon's house, in other words, suburbia, somewhere in Southern California where I was taken, we walked into the house. There was all kinds of cameras and all this fancy stuff that you'd only see on TV when you were watching TV. Videos are project. They had the live TVs. You could see video screens that you could see that you were on TV. That's something I'd never seen before, unless it was chemically repressed, which starts pulling up triggers again. When I start seeing electronic equipment as a kid, it's like that. It's like a trigger. And so I get into that house. They go over about 30 minutes. These people died. They all died in the same little dancing sequence that's going on that I can describe later. They died. They're put in body bags. Those kids I didn't see cut up. The one in the temple I saw cut up. The little girl I saw cut up. Those kids weren't cut up. So when I left the house, there was a school bus, a yellow school bus out front. The doors were open, and there was black plastic, about 4 foot high, that had a fence, like a security fence, that went all the way from the front of that bus all the way into the house. And I was told to sit there and remember this day. My head was barely over the black plastic, and they carried out those bodies one by one in the black plastic, or in black plastic bags, down the sidewalk, which had this plastic wall. Am I describing the plastic fence good enough to you? They built a temporary fence. It was plastic fence, door of the bus all the way to the door of the house, so people could come in and out. Whoever was watching, and they had people watching those that were watching, they did a good job. Whoever was watching could see heads moving. They could see carrying stuff, but they didn't know what they were carrying. And they carried the bodies in and out that way. So.
And what do they do? What is their intention for killing so many people at a time? And what do they use? Where do they take? Do you know what they would do with those bodies afterwards? What their intention with all of that was?
When we find out that exact date, we'll probably find out that a prophet or apostle died that day. So there was always something to that. So an apostle, when Bruce McConkie died, I am almost convinced that people died too. And they kept his body on ice longer than 6 days, because he wasn't reported dead until the day my last employment was, 11/4, which turned into an assassination of a Jewish prime minister too, Ariel Sharon, I think it was. I don't get the name wrong, but that date. So Kimball was reported, which was also the date Reagan got elected. So it was a big date in his interrogation when they started asking him questions about what does he know about this date. That's the date he became president. Okay, well, something like that. But
How did they kill them? What method did they? Was it shooting? Was it drugging? How did they
Kill who?
kill
Which one?
75
Each one,
people?
all of them have different answers. So
Just this one specific one that we're talking about right now at your house. That was the
what I call
75.
Nixon's house, or
Yeah.
what I call, okay, there's about 20 kids that died there. They were all in their upper teens, and they all died by throat slice, followed by a very quick wrap around of a rag or a towel around their head, followed by tape around it, and then followed by two people catch them and start piling them up. And it 1, 2, 3. The ones that hadn't been killed yet that were lined up had these really big headphones on, about like that, and they're supposed to keep their eyes closed and had dark sunglasses, and they're supposed to be going like this. And that's what they did.
Was
And
it
then
in a satanic ritual setting?
I don't know what a satanic ritual setting is, and I've met Anton LaVey, but it was a paranormal event where they were predicting the future, and that all those kids had different numerical sequences as start dates, but they all had the same end date. But in that 2-minute slice of time, there was 3 seconds on that one, 3 seconds on that one, 3 seconds on that one, or however 10 seconds, however long it ever took to complete the ritual. They were So the ritual did get changed too in 1989. They didn't just slice, because there was a lot of blood that came out that way, even with the quick nap. And what they started doing after 1980, most of the time, was overdose while sitting in a chair. This is what happened in the temple. What happened to Bruce McConkie? Overdose, stops the heart, head nods. Bednar came behind, pulled the hair up, and instead of doing a smiley slice, took a scalpel. See, the word is scalpel. Going to do surgical, spiritual surgery, and twisted it in the jugular, to make sure that there was no chance of life after death in the next couple minutes, as the body was taken care of. And that's the ritual complete. Quickly wrap.
So yeah,
Very
well,
little blood. Very little blood. When I say quickly wrap, it's like after the incision, it's a quick wrap around the neck to seal it somewhat, then tape to seal it, and then the body is transferred from that chair to a gurney. The head is elevated, the feet are taken down, the right index finger tip is cut first, then the right greater toe is taken, because you're supposed to not take fingertips from Mormon apostles, because they can't do secret handshakes in heaven. That is the primary bone for most of those handshakes, that you have to have that little bone right there to do it. You can't go to heaven. They think they reassigned the spirit because it can't go to heaven.
well, that's a skull and bones thing with the finger, those handshakes. That
Well, I don't know that one.
What?
I don't know that one. I just know the Mormon stuff. I
Oh
don't
yeah,
know
that Mormon stuff is just come
and
from skull and bones.
I've been to Geronimo's real grave. I was recruited by H.W. Bush in 1976 into Grill Flame, and I've seen Geronimo's skull, or what was said to be Geronimo's skull, in 1985.
So at that ceremony, or at that killing that you were at paranormal event, as part of all of that, is there also like sex involved? Is it sex ritual, or is it just killing?
So as I recovered these memories, there was sex, and it's usually right before. So right before Bruce McConkie died, that's when I had the priapism. That's when I had sexual intercourse with a black woman that I would later meet all through my life, and Bruce McConkie died quickly after. So there might be something to all that, as far as the spirit is assigned into the new host that was just conceived within a certain space of
But this
time.
one with the 20 kids at the Nixon house, is there sex involved in that one that you have
I have
memories of?
I have no memories of sex. No memories
And
of
what
sex.
about, did you ever witness like adrenochrome in any of these? Are they doing cannibalism or adrenochrome drinking?
There's two situations of where I was told that I was eating human meat, and I didn't want to eat human meat. I want nothing to do with human meat. I didn't care if they promised me it would take me into the future, if it would do this, if it would make me a millionaire. I wanted nothing to do with any of that. And I don't think I ate human meat, and I sure hope I didn't eat human meat. But there was talk about Bruce McConkie's short ribs, the short rib section, and he was de-loined right down the back. So the back strap, if you take a human and you put a hook through them, and you go right down the middle of the back, and then take the two muscles along the side like you would a deer, and then the short rib meat was turned into a burger. I don't know if that happened or not, and I'm blacked out. And they did have a bear that had been skinned, that had been harvested in Mexico, and then there was another two bears in Canada that we talked about later on, another one. But they had a bear, and a bear skin looks like a skinned human, kind of, sort of.
Okay.
And so I don't know. I don't recover that memory, and I don't want to explore it, and I just don't want to have ever eaten meat. I hope
Yeah.
I didn't. And I don't think the government made
Well,
me do it.
I'm not so curious. I'm just curious more. Well, not just curious. I think it's important exposure for the Mormon Church. Not so much that you ever participated in it, but did you ever witness it or know that they're involved in it, in cannibalism?
That memory of me arguing with them that I don't want to participate in that ritual of eating the short rib meat of Bruce McConkie in the form of a tasty burger,
Okay.
which turned into a Kahuna burger in the Pulp Fiction movie series. Because that was
Yeah.
and Clinton Ferrantino or whatever that guy was, he did some really wacky shit that was talked about before it happened. So his script writer or screenwriter had some CIA, like the CIA comes out or the military or whoever from the government's giving news tips to people. They're kind of like news tips that are like movies and songs. Like, here's a good song for you, buddy. Here's the lyrics. You do it in B chord.
So the SRA stuff that I've heard a lot of other Mormon survivors talk about, that's more in a satanic ritual setting where people are dressing up like Satan and Lucifer, and they're doing the flesh and the sex rituals and all of that. The stuff that you were involved in seems a little bit different than that, and it was more like for paranormal purposes, and they were doing human sacrifices, but it just maybe was a different branch of ceremonial type stuff that they were involving you in than the other SRA victims of Mormonism and what they're witnessing with these higher echelons of the Mormon Church, that, you know, the prophets and general authorities that they're involved in. Would that be accurate?
Yeah, well, my stuff, the audience was supposed to be the U.S. government and the world governments. They were trying to prove that they could predict that it would rain in Salt Lake on a certain day, or that it would do something in a certain way at a certain, that they had absolute proof, but they had to be really careful, because if they told what the stock market would be, if one person bought one share of stock out of sequence, it would make everything go sideways. And so there's the whole, oh, we don't know about the future type stuff. And then most of the people were like, these people are fucking crazy, and we know this. Well, let's let him hang himself. And they gave him some rope.
Yeah. So just to clarify before we hop off for today, and I appreciate your time, this ritual, you did see Bednar and Monson with bloody hands participating in these deaths.
I've seen Bednar, Nelson, Benson, Lee. I think when Lee died, Lee died in 90. Benson died in 95. Lee died in 73. Lee, I probably didn't. Oh, there's another old man in there that reminds me of Lee. Most of them. Most, if not all. Now, when you get into Uchtdorf, I've never seen Uchtdorf do anything. I've never seen Christofferson do anything. But there was one after Bednar, and it might have been Christofferson at the 1987 event in a film situation. So I don't know if it was him or somebody pretending to be him. So I wasn't in person.
Did you say Monson?
Monson definitely beheaded a little girl in 1973 outside my house. It's been traumatic memory for me for decades. Yeah, and it's been recovered and bended down again. It was recovered as a kid and caused me much problems. And they came over and drugged me again. That was a tough one. That was on my whole family, and my whole family wasn't compensated. They were just drugged again, and they turned out however they turned out and dead.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I appreciate your time, and I appreciate you digging into these horrific memories to expose what needs to be exposed and taking your time with me. And it'll be good to, you know, get more into the stuff that you're exposing. If I can have more time to go through your page and read some of the documents that you have to send to me, and then, you know, we'll set up another time later and get into some more of it. But I think this is going to be really good information for a lot of people that follow my audience, and bringing out some exposure to the Mormon Church, because that's definitely something you and I share in common. Is I would love to see that whole organization just take a big, huge, massive fail into the oblivion.
Me too. I want to see this video, because I've only seen one video of me in my entire life, and that was the Eric Smith one. And so, are you going to put this one up?
Yeah, I'm going to put it out. Absolutely.
Will you send it to me and let me know? And do you know when it's going to be or something?
Yeah, I have a YouTube on Kadosh LIfe, and I also have a Rumble channel, so it'll be on both of those, and I will absolutely share it and send it to you as soon as I get it up.
Thank you, ma'am. Nice to meet you. Shalom.
Thank you, PJ. David, we'll talk to you soon.
Bye.
Okay, bye-bye.